How does a man who lied, cheated, and stole become one of the most beloved heroes in wrestling history? How does someone fight his way back from personal demons, career-ending injuries, and the brink of losing everything, only to rise to the top of the WWE Universe? And how did Eddie Guerrero turn every setback into a moment that made fans and wrestlers alike love him even more? Tonight, we're diving deep into the life, the tragedies, the triumphs, and especially the legacy of Latino Heat. Welcome to episode 72 of the Stevie Richards Show. Viva la Raza. Welcome back to the home studio and welcome to episode 72 of the Stevie Richards Show. I'm very excited. James is hopefully excited, and hopefully you're excited out there. Let's start off hot because we're going to talk about one of my favorite people inside and outside the ring. Eddie Guerrero, and my co-host James Romero is a close runner-up as one of my favorite people. How are you, James?
It's because I pay you promptly is why, most likely.
Not every month.
No, there has been the odd day, I'll grant you that as well. They would have been sick. Give me a break, for goodness sake. Right, we have, as you said off air, Stevie, man, we've got a packed show. And you're right, we've got a packed show. I don't know how we're squeezing all this Eddie Guerrero stuff into one episode, but we are going to do our darndest before we talk about a couple of bits of news as well. Stevie wanted to do in this episode the history of the front turnbuckle bump as well, and I'm like, man, we're not getting to that, are we? But maybe I
just wanted to bring out my historic timeline overlay so I can edit it in there and feel like I'm a part of the team. Yeah, the history of the front turnbuckle bump. If you don't think that's going to be a long video, then I wish you were right. But at least we have three, maybe four. We had a fourth that we were going to add, but it's going to be three for sure. One, which I have not watched yet. That's a surprise live reaction to that.
Well, whether that happens on this show or not, let's just get through it then as quickly as we can. PWTs are on PWTs, BWO t-shirt, Stevie Richards Show official merchandise. We will be adding more stuff soon. So YouTube, Gordon Bennett, Stevie Richards Fitness. Maybe you should just call yourself Stevie Ritness. That's really
Stevie Ritness. Yeah, I mean, we're going to get to the point where the language is already LOL, LM, all the emojis and everything. It'll just be an emoji of maybe a camera and a dumbbell, and that'll be Stevie Richards.
The richness.
That would be awesome.
I was thinking.
The $1 million man.
Someone wrote to me and said the $1 million man was possibly stolen off Playboy Buddy Rose, who submitted that idea to Vince McMahon as a gimmick for himself. So I need to look into that, very much so, and that might be a Listmania thing in the future. But anyway, we must get through the intro quickly because we got so much. Stevie Richards is also on Cameo. He's one of the most popular celebrities on Cameo because he gives you more than your money's worth. Links in the description for all this kind of stuff. And of course, the Stevie Richards Show Patreon as well. This past Monday, we watched WrestleMania 1, the main event. Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff seconded. Or would it be thirded if there's already two?
Yeah, it'd be, in their corner, Cowboy Bob Orton. Everybody was in every corner, whether they were part of the team, managing, ring bell, announcing. There was a special enforcer that only enforced swinging over the ropes once. You point that out multiple times.
Muhammad Ali did nothing in that.
He was the best worker in the whole match, right?
He got his money.
Orton got two moves in, so he worked twice as hard, or three times or four, as Muhammad Ali. But this coming Monday, we watched what was considered by you, myself, and many people to be maybe the greatest sub 10-minute match.
Was it sub 10 minutes? Because it was a 15-minute video, but there was some palaver after the fact.
It was very weird that way, yeah. So it was definitely one of the best, I would say, cruiserweight matches you'll ever see. And it really did remind us of a time that you put in the watch along that it was so exciting because there was such an underground kind of swell for people like Rey Mysterio. Oh, he's coming to WCW. I remember this. Or the indie scene was such a great feeder for the TV promotions back then. And then people were going back and forth between those. I remember when I started wrestling, people that were between NWA or WCW and WWE were either on the indies and then later on in ECW. So you were getting like the full journeyman type of, thing with somebody going here to there and everywhere in between. It was very, very exciting. Not so much today.
No, man. I mean, I say this as well. I always use the example of Dolph Ziggler. That guy was there for nearly 20 years. And we will talk about Dolph later on as well in this episode as well. Nothing changes. Randy Orton's been there 25 years. I mean, yeah, characters change, motivations change, matches change, but when I think back in the day, hey, Degeneration X, really the classic version of it, lasted a year, with the Outlaws and X-Pac. A year, that's it. And then you got that crappy version for a short while afterwards that no one really cared about. But, like, these amazing things that, like, all-time legendary wrestlers and factions and storylines, stuff like that, something happened, then you moved on, and then you went to the next thing. There was so much turnover, and, some good, some bad, but you never knew what you were going to get of a given week. And then I remember in the Ruthless Aggression era, you basically knew everything you were getting every single week for the most part. Like, new wrestlers coming in were not... Well, they had a lot of vignettes. I'll give you that for nothing at the time. 2003, 2004, there were some great ones. But there was so little comparative turnover that it was nowhere near as exciting as a fan, I think.
Well, you know what it is, too? That it simulated the territory days before there was really, nationwide or even worldwide television. And you could go somewhere, and that's the Memphis, I'm sure Dutch has talked about it, that's the Memphis formula. That when you came in, even with Vince Sr., you came in and you already knew your expiration date for your run. You knew you had a 6-month thing, and you were going to go away, not only for the sake of the promotion to stay fresh, but for you to stay fresh and come back. How many people have gone away from Memphis, come back, gone away, come back? Same thing in Oregon, same thing in Texas, all sorts of things. It was it was rough. You were doing easily, you would pray for 300-mile drives every night. That was short, especially in the Bill Watts Mid-South territory. That was probably the worst. Has Dutch ever worked for Bill Watts? Or
Yeah.
Territory?
He did 85. He said, I can't remember how many miles he said he drove, but he said it was well over 2,000 per week.
I had heard that average from many, many people. 2,000 to 2,500 was usually just the average. And you were most times driving back home and then making the big drive again. I guess that makes it a little bit better. There were certain times where you did get a hotel, but I know a lot of guys would try to get back home and then do the drive, unless they were so far out in Louisiana or other places. You're shaking your head, no?
No. I was just agreeing with you. Was it shaking my head?
I thought Dutch had other information. I'm not saying every single night. I think Memphis in some times when they were booking, they would come back home almost every night for that.
Yes, some nights they would. I mean, some of the better territories, I think, were like, I guess the AWA, because I think you'd only work 5 days a week or something.
And they were the best paying for the time.
Yeah, they were really well paid. And I think at some point, do you know who maybe one of the first territories, apart from maybe Florida, who had a plane? Was Calgary.
Calgary?
Calgary
really?
had a plane, I think, in the 50s
Crockett.
and 60s.
Oh, man. You've really taken life in your hands with a bunch of wrestlers in a plane, and it was early days of aviation. Okay.
Yeah, because I know Eddie Graham, I think, had a plane. The Crockett's had 2 planes, which helped bankrupt them, which is why they had to sell in '88. But I think Calgary might have been maybe the first territory that had a plane or a dedicated plane. Someone write into me and tell me.
Do it for the weather. I mean, even flying's dangerous.
Yeah, but they were going Vancouver and stuff at the time. The Calgary, the Stampede territory was a lot bigger in the earlier days than it would be in the 80s, for example, I think. Ross Hart might set me straight on that. I'll have to ask him. But yeah. That would be something to ask.
Featured in Brett's book, by the way, heavily featured.
No, you're thinking Bruce.
Bruce. If Ross is going to come after me, I keep mixing him up with Bruce. I'm sorry.
Right,
I'm sorry, Ross. Please pass along my apologies.
So this episode's going to be all about Eddie Guerrero, of course, and we'll get to a bit of news. But just beforehand, I slipped this in at the beginning. Have you got any memories of photographer George Tahinos that passed away recently? He did quite a lot of photography in ECW. I don't know if you've got any memories of him or anything you can speak on about him.
Always good memories. Always good memories. The best memories of George. Rest in peace. My condolences, our condolences go out to him, his family, and his close friends. George was always a really nice guy. He kind of reminded me of Bill Apter in a way, who was also there for some of the shows. Take a lot of pictures and just ask for credit. If you were going to use them or do anything, even at conventions later on, that's when really I had a chance to speak to George from time to time in a longer, you're getting ready for the show, you say hello to him, do whatever. There's so much of a whirlwind, even in ECW, of stuff that needs to be done. But the conventions is kind of a great place to kind of sit down and talk to people or just stop and have a real conversation. And George was a solid dude. He did a lot for the boys, took pictures. A lot of times he would, say, give me credit for the picture, but you could still sell 8x10s and do things like that. Very generous guy. I did not know him much outside of just talking to him before and after the show. And then, like I said, more detailed conversations, and never super personal. Just, how are you doing? What are you up to? He'll talk about shows he was shooting and stuff like that. I don't know, like, it's a small world, but I don't know if George was figured in with a lot of other photographers or Bill Apter, how close he was to those people. I'm hoping that the legacy of George Tahinos and the photos that he took, or the man he was, are really featured in a way. But the way things move and everything, and of course he's an unsung hero because he captured a lot of photography and a lot of photos for the magazines, for ECW, in moments that maybe, the handheld or even the hard camera couldn't catch. So definitely, the photographers in wrestling are, back then, definitely unsung heroes. Did you ever meet him?
No, never spoke to him. I only knew of his name because WWE actually uses quite a lot of his photographs, not only in their DVDs, documentaries, but also in some of their website photo compendium things from ECW especially. So I've seen his name many times, but no, I've never met him, talked to him.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of photographers that used to hang out. Way back, there was the woman with the long dark hair, and I don't know her name. I've met her a few times at convention. Way back in WCW, she would take in early WWF days, but you had Apter. I think there was a guy, Eric Rosen, that would take pictures at ECW as well, maybe even work with George. I'm not sure, but that was one of my favorite things, and obviously it wasn't Shawn's at WrestleMania 11. The photographers and the paparazzi all around the ring. I love that Japanese style big fight feel with all the flashes going off and stuff, until Shawn gets backdropped on the one of them and gets mad and drags him off.
You also mentioned that when we were watching WrestleMania 1, and just how surrounded the ring was, not only by the police, but the photographers and just other general hangers-on to make sure the match went off well, which is still incredible that, it was the last time that kind of happened as a real thing was like Survivor Series 97, when there just seemed to be too many people at ringside for no obvious reason.
Yeah, and it seems like there should be a MASH unit backstage for everybody be thrown. But that also lends to the point that people did go outside, but for the majority of these matches, even the WrestleMania 1 main event, it stayed in the ring for most of the time. There was some things that happened, but I think also the chaos, the controlled chaos of, here comes Piper or somebody with a chair, and they part like the Red Sea and get out of Dodge. That, to me, there's a certain amount of danger in that, the unpredictability. Like, I got to get out of the way. You know what I mean? It's a real thing. I think it's a tiny detail, but like you said, it makes it feel like an old Muhammad Ali, who, by the way, you said didn't do anything at WrestleMania 1. Wasn't me. But Muhammad Ali matches and fights and other big fights had all those photographers around the ring, probably the same ones that did the wrestling at the time.
Trying to think, the only other time in the WWF I remember that happening, I think, was when Yokozuna defeated Hulk Hogan. Obviously, they had Downtown Bruno Whippleman as the fake photographer with the beard, with the flame coming out of it.
And shot the thing, yeah.
Yeah, but they had loads of photographers, I think, for that one as well. which I thought was cool. And then he had the big
I
photo
used to
press
like
thing.
one of my favorite things, and we can talk about it on a future episode, Take a Drink, or this Eddie Guerrero will be a part 2 if I keep going. I could talk forever about that kind of stuff, but I love the fact that they used to have the cameramen in the blue jumpsuits, and then that would lend to like a Shawn Michaels or other people being able to disguise themselves and jump the guy they're working with in a storyline. I love that. That was one of my favorite things.
Austin.
Except for, what was it? That one too. But there was the one also.
Mick Foley did it once
Garden
with the Mankind mask on, where he was in a boiler suit.
Who did that?
Mick Foley pretended to be a cameraman, but he was wearing the Mankind mask.
Oh, yeah, a parody of that. I was just going to bring up the Sid versus Shawn in the Garden, where Sid won the title, and Jose Lothario had the heart attack, and Sid grabbed the camera from the cameraman, who could have been a worker because it was the jumpsuit kind of disguise. But to me, the cameraman, God, we're really diving deep into it. That just differentiated them from everybody else. That you were part of the crew that has the camera. There's a unique look to that. I don't know when they stopped doing that.
Ooh, 98? 99?
Attitude Era type stuff.
Yeah,
I
it
think.
seems to be. Yeah. Then they all started wearing the Attitude, WWF Attitude t-shirts instead. So I guess it was a merchandising thing.
True. All right, I'm gonna stop. I could talk for another hour about cameramen and jumpsuits and disguises, but let's talk about Eddie Guerrero, because hey, if you're going to talk about creative ways to cheat, creative ways to insert yourself into something, Eddie was the master of that.
That's a great segue, but I'm going to go back to the cameraman. Owen Hart, when he was over the edge, that's how they got him past fans. They put him in a boiler suit to get him up the ladder. Sadly, he shouldn't have done it, obviously, but also that's how they got Sting up there as well. They would disguise him as a cameraman or someone in a jumpsuit and then sneak them past and get up there. So it serves a couple of purposes. There.
Okay.
Suck on that.
I thought you were going to keep talking.
No.
Also, it reminds me of Michael Myers. That would be another thing with a jumpsuit.
And nails.
Yeah. You're never going to see best jumpsuits in WWE, and nails will never be featured. Maybe you should talk about that on List Mania. A number of people have beat up Vince McMahon.
Oh, that's coming.
List.
Don't you worry, that's coming. We've got so much coming.
Okay.
I've already texted, because we've got a new script guy as well. I've already texted him with about 19 ideas. I said, okay, well, that's the next 3 months sorted. See you later. And then gave him a load of examples. Just like, yeah, write them up. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you.
How do you juggle like script writers, editors, subordinates like myself, construction crews, all these different people? How do you do it? What say you?
With great difficulty.
Okay, that's a good answer.
And furious anger. That's how it works. Yeah, no construction crew here today, by the way. It's too cold.
The comments will love that.
There isn't. It's too cold. Like concrete will crack. It's zero. It is freezing. You can't do it. You can't lay concrete. You can't lay the 18mm topping material. I could get. All right, forget it. I could get into that too much as well. Right, let's go straight to Eddie Guerrero. So I hadn't realised this until Maven posted something with Mr. Kennedy last Friday, and I thought, well, how can we not talk about it? And it's the 20th anniversary of the death of Eddie Guerrero, and I was at the show after he died. It was in it would have been in Sheffield, in fact, because my cousin was at Sheffield University and I went down. And I remember Batista, if that wasn't the Raw afterwards, it was the Raw after that. And I remember Batista in tears, floods of tears, after the show went off air, holding up a Eddie Guerrero t-shirt and the entire, fan base chanting Eddie's name and stuff like that. So I completely forgot that until just this second. But yeah. So Eddie's passing 20 years ago, and I think one of the most incredible things about his legacy is that he's more popular now. It's like there's so many wrestlers who, steal his stuff, and anytime anybody cheats in an elaborate way kind of thing, everyone starts chanting Eddie or a frog splash or Three Amigos or whatever it is, and he's more popular now than he's ever been, thanks to also like Ray and Dominic, and one of the girls doing the Three Amigos as well.
Yeah, I remember. Was it Lyra?
Was it Lyra?
The Becky Lynch match? I thought Becky Lynch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Constant. Yeah, just like, how can you say that about too many people other than Eddie Guerrero, that he's more popular now than he ever was?
Yeah, he is definitely. It's something, and it warms my heart to see that. By the way, when you talked about when you found out, when I found out, I was driving down Route 84 to Route 2 in Connecticut, going towards Mystic, Connecticut. I lived out, by the way. By the way, Ox Baker also lived out that way, and I remember Scotty Tuhati called me, and I was just joking around when we would keep in touch. I was gone from the company. Scott was still there, and I remember he called and he was like, dude, I need to talk to you. I was like, yeah, what's going on? And I went into something like funny, joking around, whatever. He goes, hey, man, Eddie's gone. And I was like, what do you mean Eddie's gone? And I pulled over thinking like, subconsciously, okay, this is going to be like really bad news. What do you mean gone? But it didn't register. And he said, Eddie passed away. Eddie's dead. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, it was just a shock for probably a few days because it literally did come out of nowhere. And then I heard the circumstances, and then my heart started to go out to Chavo, who had found him. It was just like, my goodness, this is just. And then we're going to go to the more heartwarming stuff. But I remember that it was just like such a surreal thing because it felt like Eddie, after all he had been through, and we're going to talk about some of that, had finally found his niche, his groove, and you can see that niche and groove still alive and well today. I think it was WrestleMania 39. They played the music and everybody on their feet and just started chanting Eddie. I mean, and like you said, when you see Dom now, you can't help but think of Eddie. So he's literally living on forever. And the wrestlers that do it, you can tell it's a pure tribute. Whether Dominic is insulting his own father by saying Eddie's his real father, or people just doing the moves. And it doesn't look like a cheap knockoff thing or somebody just trying to get over by using Eddie's name. It feels like a real heartfelt, we're doing this for Eddie, and the people get it. It's such a symbiotic, perfect thing that I don't think it's been done with anybody else ever in wrestling. Am I off with that?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I suspect that, like in Lucha
consistently
Libre,
over years and decades. That's what I'm saying. It stood the test of time.
Well, I mean, you could argue, in Mexican wrestling, the son of, like, El Hijo del Santo or whoever would, pay tribute to their father kind of thing and basically take their moveset and then be stars on their own. I get, obviously, because of their father, they're, stars and in taking their name and everything, but then they carve out their own niche as well. So I suspect that may be more like a south of the border kind of thing almost, paying tribute to that degree. But it doesn't feel like a rip-off in that sense.
No, not at all. Not at all. And whenever they're on the West Coast or in San Diego or Texas, I think New Mexico too, they'll do stuff that the local demographics will be like, oh, I remember that because I watched Eddie Guerrero, or even Mexico for sure. I mean, Tony Khan and AEW have done a really good job with the Owen Hart tournament. I would love to see WWE do something because it's so strong still, even decades later, 20 years later, to name the tournament or to do something special for Eddie that will just, it will enhance the memory even more if that's possible.
Do you know that in the early 2000s, the reason that Paul Heyman pushed Ray and Eddie so hard in 2002, I think, when he took over the SmackDown head writing gig, was because the quarter hours would spike in, your California, your Texas, your border cities kind of thing, or, heavy Hispanic population. They would spike those ratings when Eddie and Ray were on TV. That's why they were treated so seriously, because of, I think, Paul Heyman spotting that first. And even though they were drastically undersized compared to most of the roster, it's like, well, they're stars, they're draws, they're already draws now, let's just go all the way. And they would with both Ray and Eddie, which is also as against the odds as you could possibly imagine, really, especially at that time.
Yeah, I think Eddie, you talk about Ray's the ultimate underdog, but as we're going to talk about during this episode and maybe a part two if we keep going, you can talk about Eddie forever in such a positive way. The thing is that, like with Eddie, talent, this is the saying that I've been told, and it sounds like BS, like the brass ring speech, but Eddie is the purest example that, as Savage would say, the cream always rises to the top. Talent cannot be denied forever. And you might have some hiccups and some roller coaster rides, but once Eddie had that angle, especially, the Bray angle, but even with Brock and winning that title, people would dare say it was not a great championship run, but I would counter that because he gave us some unbelievable matches and moments, before, during, and even, after that.
So one of the things that I've heard, and I can't remember who came up with this idea or suggestion first, but was he looking unhealthy prior? Because he was huge at the time. Once again, he's 225, 230, something like that on a 5'6" frame, which is ridiculous. And then also, someone actually said, and it's an interesting quote, he basically died trying to be a main eventer, trying to put that size on so he didn't look out of place with the Triple H's or Brock Lesnar's or Kurt Angle's or whoever it might be. Is there any credence to that theory that all that packing on the muscle will have contributed, as well as everything else he was doing at the time?
Well, I didn't know any kind of, I didn't have any kind of information or discussions with Eddie, or he never opened up that he was fighting to stay in the main event. He was really worried about his run ending. He was worried about looking less than when you stand him next to a Triple H or Brock Lesnar or any of these other guys. I wasn't privy to any of that stuff. Whenever I talked to Eddie, it was a very nice conversation. Most times that had nothing to do with wrestling. He had his Bible with him. We would talk about that. He was one of the few people that really would talk about that kind of stuff openly in the locker room, and that inspired me to kind of stay kind of on that path the best of my ability in my faith. But at the same time, he seemed like always like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. That's what I interpreted as whenever I saw him, that he was, whether it was outside the ring, inside, a combination of both, I always felt sometimes a bit of sadness from Eddie. You can kind of see the emotion. He always wore his heart on his sleeve, whether for good or bad, good, bad emotions, whatever it might be. And that's what I could feel. But it was never like when I looked at him or talked to him, or he kind of would have that heavy sigh sometimes. It always stood out to me that it wasn't just your general wrestling push and I got to keep my spot, brother, and all this stuff. I thought it was more of the weight of everything on his shoulders, maybe family, friends, responsibility, knowing that the company is counting on him. So there was a little bit of that I could interpret, but I wasn't thinking like, man, he's really trying to keep himself huge. He's on a road to kill himself basically by trying to stay in the main event. I never got that impression.
Yeah, if you read his book, and it's not one of the better books out there by far, it really isn't. But you can always glean something, even from a badly written autobiography. And this is one of those interviews as told by kind of things, and then ghost written. But there's a lot that stands out to me, and one of them is constantly arguing with his wife, and almost on the verge of breaking up, and then breaks up, and then eventually gets back together. Probably shortly before his title reign. It was a while since I read the book, but I did scan through it for some research for this. He always seems completely stressed out about his family life, and then being away for so long, but also talking about, I think in later years, getting bigger, his worries about not standing out. He wasn't happy with his title run because the weight of the world was on his shoulders, and it's 2004. It's nothing to do with whether he was champion or not. It was just a down time for the business in general, but I think he took it personally. I've got a couple of facts for you that I didn't actually write down for you to read. One, he was soon penciled in to win the title again, shortly before he died. And two, I'll give you this. Who do you think he was penciled in to wrestle at WrestleMania 22 should he have lived?
Triple H.
Shawn Michaels.
Oh, really? That would have been awesome.
That was the theory. That was the rumor going around that he was penciled in to wrestle Shawn, which would have been amazing.
It would have. I mean, it would have. WrestleMania 21 was Shawn and Kurt, and that's an absolute clinic. And I would say Eddie would take that challenge because there's that friendly competition, especially between him and Kurt, based on what they did at WrestleMania 20. I think they would try. Shawn and him would try to beat that match and also beat the WrestleMania 20 match.
Okay, then. So let's. Enough of the down stuff. Let's celebrate. I guess your and Eddie's relationship over the years, because you would be in ECW, WCW, and WWE with him over the years, so you'd have plenty of time to interact. I guess very much that the first time you met him was in ECW. So I'll tee this up a little bit. He was kind of an underground favourite. You know, we were talking about in the 90s, you know, how exciting it was, all these underground favourites that would eventually make it through to, you know, one of the big two or the big three. Eddie, with Art Barr, had a great match, I guess, for the time, if you want to call it that way, but it probably still holds up, in AAA When Worlds Collide, the original When Worlds Collide back in 1994. He got noticed plenty of places, and then in ECW he turns up in 1995 for a grand total of, I think, 18 matches. So he really wasn't there very, very long. But, you know, made a definite impact. He basically pretty much wrestled only Dean Malenko and Too Cold Scorpio, and then there'd be a couple of matches where, you know, a couple more people would be involved, but he was sort of in and out after a few months, a former ECW television champion, I believe, as well, in his first match. But what do you remember of Eddie in ECW? I imagine he wasn't the same guy 10 years earlier than he would be in, you know, the mid-2000s.
Well, I'm not sure, and I'm going to explain why in a second, but that Mexico match against Art Barr, he was the Love Machine, right?
He was tagging with Art Barr as Los Gringos Locos, yeah. Against,
but didn't they do a hair versus hair match? And didn't he shave Art Barr's head?
Not on that pay-per-view, I don't think.
Eventually. Oh, God, man. I'm so off today.
Yeah, I'm wrong. Yeah, they did.
Okay, let's keep it in then. You can edit some points of that out. There's some, Good Lord. Not today, CTE. Earlier today, but not today. There we go.
After the match, Barr and Guerrero first cut off each other's hair, and then he had the last of it shaved off as a result of their loss. Do excuse me, I forgot the ending. There you go. So, yes, you're right, Stevie.
They were not wrestling each other, so you're kind of correct at the same time. Yeah, they were tagging and lost the match.
Yeah, they tagged against Octagon El Hijo del Santo, I think.
But the part we got right was there was a head shaving, and he was called that Love Machine. Or they
he was the Love Machine, Art Barr, but I think he died later that year, Art Barr. He died that same year, I think.
I think so, too, yeah. So, but getting back to ECW, I did not really interact with Eddie too much until WWE, and I'm going to explain why. In ECW, and we talked about my negative experience with Dean Malenko throughout my entire life.
We've never talked about that on this show. You know that.
Yeah, I did have a negative experience with Dean. I understand where he was coming from in some ways, but he never, ever treated me well at all. So what you just said was he wrestled Dean most of the time. So I would go up and say hello to both of them. Dean wouldn't even look at me. Sometimes I even shake my hand. Eddie would be gracious. But just by, I guess, association, I would keep my distance from Eddie. I didn't want to, but, you know, you're not going to go over there and ask for somebody to be a jerk to you time after time. Again, well, maybe in wrestling, it seems to happen a whole lot. In WCW, we were all kind of not in cliques, but in little groups or universes. He was hanging out with the cruiserweights. We had our flock stuff going on. We were in the crowd. We didn't interact a whole lot then. In WWE, because ECW, WCW, I was always a fan of Eddie's work. WWE, I had the chance, after being comfortable a little bit in the locker room, to start getting to know Eddie better. And that's when we really became, I would love to say we became friends. I hope he considers me a friend. But for out of respect and not to be too presumptuous, we were really, really friendly, and I always sought him out, especially after, like I said before, see him carrying his Bible, ask him questions, sit down with me, and that was the majority of what we would talk about. It wasn't hours, but you know what? With his busy schedule, always being figured in, and also doing, and we worked together in one match, a tag match, when he was doing Latino Heat with China, and we were at the right censor. And I talked about that before, how I was really disappointed with my performance. He put his arm around me and he goes, listen, I know better than anybody else. You can dig yourself out of this, because I'm fat, I'm out of shape, I look like crap, I work like crap right now. And we're going to talk about some of the things he'd been through and overcame. And that was very inspirational when, just for that 20 or 30 seconds, putting his arm around me, hand on my chest, and just kind of giving me that squeeze and saying, don't give up, meant the world to me.
Okay, I've added that in. We'll get to that in just a second. Just building up to WCW. I mean, I suggest that you probably didn't have too much crossover with him because there was like 300 people in the company. You probably barely even saw him, I guess.
That's what I mean. There was different categories of people that interacted, and we never did much in the way of that. The closest we got, I think, was the Halloween Havoc, where him and Ray worked, and we were in the crowd. I think that was '97, so we were definitely there at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. But you got to remember too, the fabulous 4 months of WCW. It takes months for you to get comfortable where you feel like you can talk. It's a different time back then. You almost feel like I shouldn't. If I say hello the wrong way, I'm going to get heat. So you try to just shake hands, say hello the nicest way possible, and then, as Bobby Eaton said, hey, don't talk, can't get heat. So you kind of kept it to a minimum.
Do you remember, I mean, if we're talking back to 1997, I think at the beginning of the year, he was still the guy in the tank top, or, the spandex, tank top kind of thing, and, personality-free, Wrestling 6 or whoever he was at the time. And then somewhere through 97, he becomes a bad guy. He's got Chavito with him. That might be in 98, but I think it's 97 when that starts. And it's great. And it's like, where did that come from? It's kind of like Razor Ramon. You like Scott Hall was just a boring big guy with a mustache. It was a great mustache. But, there was nothing to the dude, apart from the size. And then he becomes the Diamond Stud and then changes that into Razor Ramon, and all of a sudden he's Johnny Charisma. I was like, where did that come from after all these years? So it's like you learned the wrestling first, then all of a sudden it just clicks. And it was amazing.
Well, it's the way it should be. You start out as a babyface and you're usually vanilla. You're nothing. And then usually the heels are experienced and have the poise, the presence, and the comfort to do what they can do. That's Scott Hall's career right there until he found it was always there. For instance, here's what I'm going to use just to veer off course for a second. Brad Armstrong is no different than Road Dogg with charisma. Is no less funny than Road Dogg. Rest in peace to Brad too. It just never showed itself on TV in any way or wasn't allowed to be shown. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe Eddie stopped giving a damn, giving an F, and just the real Eddie Guerrero, or maybe even the frustration, because he did that promo on Eric Bischoff and started the LWO. I know the group, but that was the Eddie that we saw develop in years, forward after that as well. I know he changed earlier than that, but maybe they just gave him the opening to be Eddie Guerrero, to be Latino Heat, because that was Latino Heat in WCW. It's really just, for anybody that says you can go out there and get over and do whatever you can, wrestling's one thing, but if they're not giving you one of these things to talk into, and they're not giving you people to play off of to bring out your real character, you're going to be hamstrung. You're going to be handcuffed. And Eddie was.
Hey, well, he made up for it absolutely later on. He was too obviously small in WCW to be pushed beyond a certain glass ceiling, which was never going to happen. The same with Jericho, the same with Raven, you can even argue to a point. Same with Benoit to a point until the very end. Dean, a lot of other guys who had, a lot of promise, but, weren't 300 pounds or already had main event runs in the WWF. You know how that goes. Did Eddie always have that strong of an accent? Because when he talks, specifically in that I'm throwing coffee on myself thingy with Eric, he could be from anywhere in America. But the accent seems to get stronger and stronger and stronger the more he carried on, and especially in WWE. Did he speak like that in real life, or was he always putting that on for the camera?
Very, very soft-spoken. Very, like I said, there was sometimes just a sadness, an aura of sadness around Eddie, but also an aura of love at the same time. Never, I think that's turned up to 11. It's not like he doesn't have the accent, but when he gets fired up and does all that, he probably reverts back to something when he was a kid and got mad, and it just comes out. Also, you got to remember the Guerrero family. When they would cut the fiery promos, they would heavier on the accent type presentation. You got to remember the family. The whole family is incredibly talented. You remember, I think it was Super Clash 3, the six-man tag, all the Guerreros versus, and Chavo Sr. and Hector are like, I'm doing stuff I've never seen before in my life. And what was that? Super Bowl 3 was 88, I think.
You know what we should watch for a Patreon exclusive? Eddie versus Hector. And they had those matches on Nitro. And it was the clash of high-flying 80s versus high-flying 90s. And it was really good.
You got to say that you have a Bischoff quote in here later on in the show. We got to give Bischoff an immense amount of credit for the way he formatted Nitro and showcased those categories, especially the cruiserweights. I don't think anybody has booked the cruiserweights anywhere close to what whoever booked them in Nitro in WCW and on the pay-per-views, they were the special attraction. And maybe that's why the knives came out for Eddie, Ray, and everybody else. Because you can't, hey, they're adult men. What's the one thing you can critique them on that they can't change? Their height. And isn't that the beginning of the end in WCW?
That needs an asterisk, by the way, in the States. Because in Japan, cruiserweight's been booked great for years.
Well, I'm talking about the big two for a certain amount of time, the big two TV promotions. That's what they would do. Mm-hmm. And dare I say it, isn't wrestling the circus? And Nitro was a circus. There was all different kinds of things and flavors for everybody throughout those hours.
Just bonkers, isn't it, that WWE or Vince McMahon or whoever, you can't draw, you're not big enough. Well, territories like Memphis did great for years, and Stampede in the 80s kind of kept that promotion alive. Then there's World of Sport for decades. They had people smaller than in Mexico for decades, Japan for decades. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, man, woman, big, small, if you can draw, you can draw. That's all that matters.
You know what it became? It became, and we have it today. All these promoters, these bookers, the creative people, they have a God complex. It has to be, I'm booking, and that's when it turned, and I was in WWE when this happened. It became serving and entertaining an audience of one. Didn't matter what anybody else cared about.
Locker room leader. Was Eddie ever considered a locker room leader?
That term's been thrown around so much. I don't know. If I would say people like Eddie, people like Kane, I would consider them to be locker room leaders because you can go to them for advice. They would give you an honest opinion. You could open up a little bit to them, and they wouldn't, at least what I knew, wouldn't stooge to the office. They never seemed to have that DNA in them. So Glenn and Eddie were two people that I would open up to and ask questions, or like I said, I was down immediately after that match. And I know Eddie was disappointed, but I think that's a leader in general, to put your arm around somebody that's down, that did a subpar performance, and coach them a bit and say, you can do this. Now, if I did it 2, 3, 4 times in a row, it's time for the Bobby Knight kind of coaching and yelling and screaming and MFing me, which I would deserve. But that's what I consider, not the silent heat or somebody going, hey, you're my henchman, go out there and make this guy's life a living hell for 6 months and do the silent heat type thing. There's other locker room leaders that are famous for that.
Mm-hmm. Fill in the blank there. Right, why don't we talk about the match then? Talk about the match and also all the other interactions with Eddie in China, I guess, at the time as well. Because when did you first work with him? Maybe not wrestling, but when was the first time you worked with him? What segment, if you remember it?
I don't remember. I only remember that tag match because it stuck out for all the wrong reasons and the disappointment. If you bring that up, like I said, my memory sometimes doesn't serve me. If I forgot doing a backstage segment with Eddie, then that's a sin on me because I would want to watch that clip a million times. I don't watch the match a million times because of that. As much as I want to see Eddie, I could watch Eddie and Kurt. I could watch, Eddie and a million other people have really good matches. But leading up to that, and I remember this too. I don't know what the timeline is, but I remember there was a time where China was not smiling as much. China didn't seem as up, but Eddie in Gorilla would always do the Latino heat, like when he was on the stage and dance around her and make her, and she'd smile and like he'd loosen her up before the match. And once again, that's a locker room leader. You see somebody that's feeling a little vulnerable, a little down, you try to get a little silly and try to bring them back up again. And there's probably 10,000 examples that other people could give. But I saw Eddie almost make himself look silly to cheer somebody up. And I witnessed that firsthand, even before that match with them when I had the subpar performance. I can't stop saying that. But in Guerrero, I remember witnessing that and going, man, that's really, really awesome.
I've got a segment here, Eddie Guerrero and Right to Censor encircled China and Billy Gunn. So this is after they broke up.
Yeah, we did I remember it was No Mercy. I believe myself and Val teamed up against Billy Gunn in China and went over on that match.
Yeah, Eddie's still on crutches at that point, but also the IC champion. But then Billy tries to rescue, and yeah.
Hey, why they ended that, I'm not quite sure. But he and China had chemistry out there, and they worked well together, and it was an awesome thing to watch.
Vicky was not a fan.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that part.
Might have something to do with it, but he does write in the book quite a lot. Vicky hated that. That's why Eddie said, like, out of respect, like, he would never, ever kiss China. Never did on TV.
But that was the beauty of it. It was a hinted relationship. In other words, they could have just been best friends. There's no, he was obviously with the flower, with the roses, and kissing her hand from time. Did that stop too? Because I remember didn't he kiss her hand a couple times?
Oh, of course they did. They were all over each other kind of thing. But then Eddie was, like, if I remember rightly, he was cheating on China, with the camera present, because you can do all sorts of crimes when the camera's present.
That was the GTV
in the shower,
stuff, right?
No, I didn't think it was. Was that GTV, or I thought they just filmed him coming out the shower?
They might have just filmed him coming out of the shower. I remember he had the towel and he kind of got caught. But there was the girls coming out of the shower with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And got caught. No, it wasn't GTV. It was literally just, hey, what's this? Hey, what is the cameraman doing here? You smart ass.
Do you remember the one where William Regal also came out the shower and he was very much method acting and he just flashed his tallywhacker out on live TV?
I do remember that.
Good.
The genius of William Regal.
The genius of William Regal, so it is. Right.
He did the old Ric Flair helicopter trick on TV.
Do we need to, anything else about the Eddie match? Because I know, I guess you're being non-specific, but you're putting it all on yourself, really. Was there anything in particular that just went wrong, or was it just, were you just not in the right headspace?
I wasn't in the right headspace. I was fat. I was out of shape. I remember taking his tornado DDT somewhat okay. Hey, here's the saving grace, though. The match wasn't very long. If it went longer, we could have had Stamford, Connecticut calling up like an Unforgiven and saying, end this match. or replace this guy with a real stunt double that can bump and do things and not be a turtle on his back. But that was actually the beginning. Like, I bring it up a lot, but that was the beginning of me, like, really having an affection for Eddie. So the worst possible case scenario turned into what I would say, at least on my side, a bonding moment where I would seek out people like Eddie Guerrero. Instead of in wrestling, you know what we do? We seek out the people that don't like us, that are going to bury us, because we're trying to change their minds. And I was well beyond that at that point.
Right, let's talk about briefly, and then we're going to be doing some what went rights and everything else like that. I want to talk about the car crash. Now, obviously, you weren't with WCW at the time. You were in, I don't know where you were, in fact. I think you might have still been on the Indies, actually.
I was actually in 98 recovering from my neck fusion surgery and getting the vocal implant, and then eventually working Indies like later that summer.
Yeah, so this was, I believe...
This is New Year's Eve, so this is after I started the Indies.
Yeah, so this is on the cusp of 1999 as well. So Eddie seemed to be heading, once again, according to his book as well, so I'm not telling any tales out of school, partying way too hard, family life that seems for just years going wrong at this point. But he basically is heading in the same direction as Brian Pillman, and I use that very specifically because Brian Pillman also had a horrific car crash when he shouldn't have been driving. But with Eddie, he was, according to himself, almost unknowingly, the way it's described in his book, was basically trying to finish himself. He was done. He just like too much stress, too much pressure, unhappy in his job, unhappy in his relationships, I guess. He had taken something like 5 times the amount of recommended GHB alternative, I guess, that was still legal at that time, and whatever else was in his system at the time. Got into his car. Supposedly, there was estimated he was driving up to 130 miles an hour, passed out behind the wheel, and he woke up in the emergency room, kept going in and out of consciousness, fighting with the emergency personnel as well. He rolled the car and careened off an embankment like a ramp, flipped so many times that they found pieces of car in the treetops. That's how, just flinging pieces off. It was estimated that Eddie was thrown from the same car 100 feet or so, but somehow lived. He was picked up by air ambulance with a fractured collarbone, compressed spinal discs, many cuts, a broken right hip socket, shredded left calf that they had to remove a pound of tissue from. The worst injury was a badly lacerated liver, but thankfully, and Eddie supposed this as well, is that even in his unconscious or semi-unconscious state, he may have instinctively tucked and rolled, so he didn't have any head injuries from it. So it was all bodily injuries rather than head. Doctor said he would never wrestle again. He would wrestle in 6 months' time. Now, because of this, on top of everything else he was doing or, living to excess, he would then develop a terrible painkiller addiction, which would see him be fired from WWE in late 2001 after a failed stint in rehab, and then, he cleaned himself up, and we know the rest of the story, but...
And that was the intervention that Dean and Saturn and everybody had, basically. Didn't they talk to the office about that because they were really worried about Eddie?
Yeah. And apparently they had every right to be worried about him as well because he was really going off the rails. With that, what do you remember hearing about that car crash? And did you ever speak to Eddie about it? And how did he change after the fact as well? Because he did have to alter his wrestling style somewhat because... After that many injuries, man, you can't quite do everything you used to, I guess.
Well, I would argue that, like, when you watch Eddie Guerrero matches that we're talking about, post, not the one for the watch along on Patreon, but we talked about him and Kurt. We talked about him and Brock a little bit. We talked about him and Ray in WWE, not WCW. He didn't look like he missed a step as time went on. He looked every bit as good, if not better. Of course, adding the Latino heat character, the lie, cheat, and steal character. And let's not forget, he also took up with Chavo, so that gave him half the load and kind of extended his career a little bit too. It was a smart move to team with Chavo. I do not remember ever, and I know for a fact I should say, I never asked him about the car accident. I remember reading about it, hearing about it, and this was mainstream news in some places too, that this happened. So not necessarily the press that WCW would want at the time, and of course not the press that Vince McMahon would potentially want leading to his release in 2001. We bring all this up because basically for Eddie to fight back from all of this, not only the physical stuff, the injuries, he should have been killed. So instinctively, he was taking like bumps to avoid and tucking his chin probably, not even realizing it because he was so ingrained in with his wrestling training is my guess. But those can end any career, not just a wrestling career, especially the compressed spinal disc, all the other stuff. The pound of flesh and tissue off your calf throws off your running and your gait. I never knew about the calf. That was news to me. So looking at that now, and especially the monkey flip, how many times he hit his calf on the ropes? It had to have like, ow, not mention if it rained or snowed or anything, but never knew that. But now that I've read all this that you just wrote, all the injuries, I'm an even bigger fan of it. I might admire him even more to become the worker and the man he was after all this, not just physically, but psychologically, emotionally, and even spiritually, because maybe this car wreck and everything else had Eddie embrace his faith. Did he mention anything about that in the book? What was the epiphany or the turning point that lend him to kind of lean into that?
I don't specifically know. Once again, I had to scan through it, but he does mention religion a lot throughout.
If you're going to almost die, that's the time to find God. If you're at your very lowest point, and he looks like and sounds like he has 2 instances in 98 and 2001 where he hit rock bottom both times within 3 years. Mm-hmm. So that's, man, thank God his friends kind of, because, man, it's so taboo to do that in wrestling. But thank God his friends, saved his life by doing something that could cost them a friendship.
With that being said, he came back in 6 months. We used to get a version of WCW worldwide. I don't know if they did an international or local version, but we used to get a version that always had Larry Zbyszko and somebody else on commentary. Sometimes Juventud Guerrero, who could barely speak English. They just thought it was funny. And I remember Larry going on for weeks and weeks and weeks that he would, when Eddie had, hey, he's returned, Eddie's back after a while. He had a horrible car crash. You know that they're saying that the Guinness Book of Records are saying that was the longest frog splash that was ever landed? Every single week. And it's like, Mike, okay, right. Triple H tears his quad, right? And they have months' worth of vignettes to the point that when he eventually returns, he's more popular than ever. And bigger than ever as well, would you believe? When Eddie nearly dies from more horrific injuries than that, all he gets is joke about Guinness Book of Records, longest frog splash, see you later, Jimmy. That's it. You could be the biggest hero in the world, you know, coming back from that.
Yeah, and that's why WCW at that particular time did not know a star when they had it right in front of their face. And Eddie Guerrero, Jericho, and a lot of other people are a prime example of that. And I'm sure that ate away at Eddie. He already had some of this with The Office, right?
Yeah, he tried to quit in '98, and in his book as well, he said, I wanted to leave for 2 years before I left. He was unhappy. Around the time that he lost the title to Ray, he was already starting, or would soon start, to be disgruntled to the point that he tried to quit.
And it was based on the fact that you're just not investing enough into me. I'm putting everything I have into this. And of course, somebody gets in that kind of car wreck, the company is probably thinking very surface level, we don't want to do it, it's bad press. But you don't know what you have there. That could have been a huge redemption story. But remember, the time and the place and the people involved at the top will not allow. It's like there's things that I've been told, and sure Eddie was told. You're not a big enough star to come back from the car wreck and for us to feature it. Isn't that kind of, whether verbally or non-verbally, they're saying, no, we're saving that for the stars to come back from.
Yeah, if memory serves me right, because I didn't write this down, but he would come back. He'd eventually be in a partnership with like Ray and Billy Kidman and Conan as the Filthy Animals. And I remember watching that and just thinking, man, WCW's gone so downhill in just 1 year. 99, just everything was the wrong move.
But then he was part of the group with everybody except for Shane that went to be part of the Radicalz that we're going to talk about, the debut in WWF at the time.
I'm glad you said that, Stevie, because we're going to be talking about the Radicalz now. So, Eddie, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit. Originally was going to be Conan and Shane Douglas as well, but we'll get to that in a second. Ended up jumping over to the WWF at the beginning of 2000, around January, February time. Do you want the story about how they jumped over? Or in fact, before I give you the whole SP, which I'm sure you know already, talk about sort of, I guess, your shock, because this was prior to RTC. You were kind of, I guess you were in the S.A. Rios days at the moment, you know, wrestling S.A. Rios on Heat every single week.
Stealing Edge and Christian's gear and helping them against Gangrel and SmackDown, all that stuff. I was just doing a parody gimmick like I did in ECW with Meanie and Nova. I just remember it being one of those things, like, it was pretty huge in WWF. Not that anybody knew, but these were going to be people, because I was a big fan of the Cruiserweight division and what they were doing. And I was also a fan of, obviously, Shane. And although Perry says all my takes are wrong, I thought he was a great talent. So you can continue that trend if you want.
You know, Perry, he really likes you as well.
What's that?
He likes you as well. You know,
I like him. I'll tell you all right, we drift off for a second. One of the biggest heartwarming bonding moments I've ever had in wrestling is we were at the big event in New York, and Perry and myself found ourselves in the same car, I think going to get something to eat or just being transported somewhere around during the convention. And I remember being so nervous because Perry, back in the day with Taz, had in the Halliburton, huge intimidating factor. They were locker room leaders through intimidation. And I remember sitting back there and I was kind of quiet. And Perry, I just asked him how he was doing, whatever. He goes, brother, I can't get my 4-3 defense to work in Madden. It's really pissing me off. And I'm like, I was like, we were just like, I felt like just hugging him, but I was still really scared of him. So I just went, But then we started talking about Madden for 15 minutes, and it's like, it's awesome when those things happen. But there was a genuine excitement, and I'm sure somewhat of the knives coming out. And then, of course, I was saying, well, there's no way they're bringing Shane back. And of course, unfortunately, I was right. That was my thought at the time. This is going to be cool. I'm a huge fan of cruiserweights. Get to see these guys work firsthand, maybe work with them. And then at the same time, I was like, man, it sucks they're not going to bring Shane in. Because you had to know from all those ECW promos they were going to do it.
Such a shame as well. I would have loved Shane. I think they really lowballed him as well.
Oh, so like they really offered him something to make sure he didn't come in anyway. So he was.
I think at one point, yeah.
Dude, how do you lowball a guy you paid $1,400 in 7 months? How do you manage to do it again and think he's going to fall for it?
Well, I think lowball at that point was 125, and WCW would have been paying him, I don't know. Do you know, I never asked him what WCW paid him, but they probably paid him $250 at least.
Minimum. Now, I know that Raven was in the threes, so maybe Shane was around that point too. I would say this also, if you're bringing in people that were all in the same group, and those guys, and Shane was essentially the mouthpiece a lot of times from what I can remember.
Yeah, that was the revolution in
the
WCW,
revolution before the Radicalz in WWE or WWF. If you're going to pay him the least amount out of the whole group, that's an ultimate slap in the face. Because they're all talking about this is what we're getting. And I think they're all going in as a unit maybe to get a uniform amount of money. Weren't they trying to negotiate as the group?
Yeah, I think it was a package deal. Because I think at the time, WWF only wanted Chris Benoit.
They didn't want Eddie?
I don't think they were that keen on Eddie. I think so. They probably looked at Dean and said to someone. I don't know about Eddie, but I guess, I don't know if it was a size thing or maybe they just had... I mean, they had a lot of talent in early WWF too. Because this was around the time that, like Too Cool were going nuts popularity-wise. Kane had another resurgence as well. DX, I think, was just about had just reformed a couple of months ago. I mean, just like the talent level, the Dudleys had just got in. Edge and Christian were now a big factor. The Hardy Boys had just become stars pretty much at that point as well. Like I think, like the APA, instead of just being like acolytes to the Undertaker, they were starting doing the barroom skits, behind the scenes with the door and everything. Everything was clicking. Then you get this influx of talent as well. But I think originally they only wanted Benoit. But then, if they stuck together, they were they had more leverage.
My question was it because of what we just talked about a little bit ago with the car crash and all the other things and some of the art issues? Was that something that maybe they at first were kind of speculating? And thank God they hired them. That's all I care about,
No, I've got something for you. Eddie said toward the end of his career in WCW, he said that the WWF wasn't even a thought in his head. I think he just assumed he would never have been hired.
That's amazing. Going from that thought to becoming pretty much they're chanting your name at WrestleMania 39 and beyond, and even now on Raw, they're doing what a turnaround. That's an inspirational story. And that's kind of what Eddie was. Eddie was he was very confident, but he was never arrogant. He was also very humble at the same time. And all wrestlers doubt themselves. All wrestlers have insecurity. All wrestlers have self-esteem issues. Eddie didn't tell you they don't. They've never been in wrestling. So let's go back to, by the way, Shane would have been great if they didn't even know what they had. And then unfortunately, I feel like this is the same thing as the Montreal Screwjob and how it could have went if Vince listened to the Yes Men. Like if Vince really wanted to do business, Shane would have been a great heel to bring in as ECW franchise. Shane Douglas would have been awesome.
Yeah, well, they already had a rip-off Shane Douglas on the roster.
Who was that?
Triple H. He stole word for word his promos and his look at times. Like within a couple of months. There's even a bit where Shane, in like the black t-shirt and the leather Harley Davidson leather backwards cap kind of thing, did a promo, and then Triple H, after he turned heel, Did the exact same promo, pretty much.
Whatever happened
Triple H
to that guy?
has completely ripped off
Triple H
Shane.
guy? I heard he's in a
Triple H completely ripped off Shane.
Trailer. I heard he's in a They Live trailer, heavily featured in that lately.
If Chris can B-roll that in somehow, that might be a bit of a tall ask. I can't remember the exact interview. I know where Shane's was. I don't know where Triple H's was.
I remember Triple H's. Yeah. It was literally the old backdrops like the 80s. It was a studio backdrop like in a locker room where he had the black leather cap on backwards with a leather jacket. Am I off with that?
I think there was one in ring shortly afterwards where it was around that time where I am the gamer. And, you just kept trailing off with every single word. But, yeah, he's a total rip-off of Shane.
Did he wear that outfit, too, in the Jim Ross interview when he called himself the Game?
Yes.
That's the one. Chris.
You can get that. No, it isn't when he calls himself the Game, though. It's something else. It's something that he copies word for word, practically. But we'd have to figure it out. I'd have to find
never do that. Come on.
I know.
Shane copied it from him. He had the thought first.
Do you want to tell the Radicalz story? I mean, how well do you know the story prior in WCW?
I do not know. If you could tell me.
I'll do the very short version. So all four of the Radicalz, plus Conan, plus Shane Douglas, they hated being in WCW. In fact, plus quite a lot of people. When it came down to being offered to leave WCW, well, there was an initial one a few months early with Raven, and they did a...
I do. Now, I can speak on that.
Right, okay. Let's break on that, because I want you to tell us that story now.
Okay, so tell me if I'm off with the details. There was a big meeting, and Bischoff had said, for lack of a better way, paraphrasing it, if you don't like it, there's the door, you can walk out, and Raven got up and walked out. And Bischoff previous had singled Raven out to a certain degree, or he'd mentioned him by name, or pointed at him, or looked at him. Didn't he kind of single Scotty out and then said that thing at the end, the ultimatum, and Scotty got up and walked out? Am I off with that?
Okay. Shane has said that he had a dictaphone on him at the time and he recorded the meeting. And he doesn't know where that tape is, but he said I need to remind him and I'll see if he can find it. That would be an amazing artifact.
But if that would happen, if Raven was offended and insulted, Raven was already, as many of other people, were tired of it and knew they needed to get out sooner or later. And that was when Eric had that conversation, or not conversation, basically talking at everybody to say, if you don't like it, leave. And Raven got up and left the room.
Yeah. And I think afterwards they may have tried to stop him from leaving. They said he's still in contract, but no, you just said.
And that's when he went back and won the tag titles with Dreamer against the Dudleys in New York.
Yeah. And then he did the surprise thing. He was there for a few months, then he went to the WWF. I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah, he was.
But imagine that, like
WWF was right around 2000,
that was the mid to late 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was feuding with Lawler, I think, Raven, when he got back in
he teamed with Taz. It was weird. He teamed with Taz against Lawler, remember?
Oh, it's just bonkers, isn't it? Then didn't he have like a masked ninja with him? Who was like maybe Tory?
Well, I will tell you this. He always wanted a ninja way back in ECW, so he was fulfilling his childhood dream of having a ninja. Man, that's like Al Snow wanted to swarm. He had all the little people, remember? All dressed as bees.
Well, it's good that some people in wrestling did fulfill their dreams. Radicalz, right? Let's go back to the Radicalz. So, let's forget about Raven. What about Raven? But anyway, right. WCW, no one's happy, obviously. Benoit and co. They actually give Benoit the title. But before then, Vince Russo, who turned up in something like October, had already quit by the end of the year and said he didn't want to be in a committee with Kevin Sullivan. So Kevin Sullivan ends up being head booker. Kevin Sullivan and Chris Benoit, you might remember, had a bit of a tiff over Sullivan's wife that became Benoit's wife, Nancy. And there was a bit of a problem between those two. Now, Kevin said that he was, he could be objective and he was still willing to put the title on Chris Benoit and stuff. Benoit didn't trust Kevin, as you might imagine, Eddie was best friends with Benoit, so if Benoit had a problem with someone, then Eddie had a problem with somebody. They all went and tried to quit. I don't know if it was to Bill Bush, I think it might have been. And he said, well, we'll let you out of your contracts, but you have to have 6-month no-compete clauses. And around that time, Mike Graham, if you remember Mike Graham, the son of Eddie Graham, told Benoit or Eddie, or I don't know if it was Dean, I think it was Dean and Perry, and maybe even Benoit as well, that he would slit all their throats for daring to try and ruin WCW and leave WCW or whatever it was. Anyway, they had that in their back pocket. They went to human resources and just say, look, this guy's threatening our lives. We could bring a heck of a lawsuit towards you. And at that point, they got their releases with no 6-month no-compete clauses. The problem with Shane was, because he was more than willing to go as well, Dean and the rest of them, but especially Dean lied to Shane's face, basically, saying whatever he said to him, and they froze Shane out of the deal. So it was just those four, not Shane. Conan felt that he wouldn't get a fair shake because of the Max Moon issue, because he ditched WWF in 92 after they, pumped in a load of money to the Max Moon costume, and he was unhappy. He didn't think he'd be treated fairly. And Shane was willing to risk it just to get out of WCW, even though he'd only been there 6 months. And in the end, Shane got...
Wow, it felt a lot longer than that. To him, probably, too. Longer than 6 months.
He was there in the early 90s, with Ricky Steamboat as a tag partner and stuff, but no, he only jumped there around like May, June time.
So what do you think? See, I hate that part about the business. And really, we're all independent contractors. So I understand everybody trying to stand together, especially to get released. That's one thing in its own. But everybody trying to negotiate as a group with that, you're always going to have somebody left out. And I wouldn't doubt it if the WWE still, even in 2025, has somewhat of a you-know-what for Shane and people like Shane. I'm sure there's some pettiness involved with that, even post-Vince and now the Triple H era. But to do that to Shane, or for Shane to think that it wouldn't be done to him from them saying, yeah, you guys can come in, but we don't want that guy. So maybe there was an ultimatum on WWF side. And what are you going to do then? In all fairness, 4 of us can go and we're all going to say no for one guy. It's a hard spot to be in for everybody.
So you remember, obviously, the 4 jumping over. Did you honestly think that they'd get a fair shot, or were you already sensing, and let's call it what it is, the Triple H reign taking over?
I wasn't completely smartened up to the whole Triple H thing, but I was there for the birth pangs of his singles domination. How should I say it? But no, I just thought that the business was still in that not getting past itself to push characters and talent, and was always relegated to this. How tall are you? How big are you? The airport test by Vince McMahon. That's where I'm looking at that. As a fan, I was excited because we are going to get that cruiserweight style in WWF now. And I was really, and of course, working people. Years down the line, I would soon be regretting that I wanted to work Benoit, because I was fighting for my life out there. I was running away for real. I didn't know. I was in over my head on that. But I was very excited about that. And as a talent, you hear stories about WCW back then. And you hear about the glass ceiling. You hear about creative control. You hear about them holding talent down. Of course, everybody's making 6 figures just about on their level or more. So you can't feel sorry for them, but you can also say, you guys got to go be stars while your bodies can still hold up to the punishment. So I was excited, and also seeing Perry in a different light in WWF at the time. Now, finally kind of hopefully getting to know Eddie and Chris a little bit. Dean, once again, if Dean was around him, I stayed away, because Dean was never giving me a good vibe. I could have replaced Dean with Shane, and I would have been happy as anybody.
Yeah, well, Dean wouldn't be wrestling for more than a couple of years in the WWF. He would, just prior to him retiring, he'd end up having a James Bond character that I think people forget, especially because it was mostly on Heat as well. He portrayed that, and then he was done. Perry, well, okay, Eddie and Benoit, we know their careers very well. Perry ends up, and we did watch this, the fight with Mike Bell. Well, it was a wrestling match that ended up in a fight, and I think there might have been a second match as well that we never got to, that we never watched, and that was still on the list. But then as a punishment, he ends up in love with a mop. What? And somehow it worked, but what do you think of that? What say you?
What say I? I mean, Perry's a friend of the show, by the way, a real friend of the show. But I would say this, Perry's a naturally funny guy too. He's very dry. If you really watch those promos and everything like that, Perry is maybe unintentionally funny in them. Not ha-ha, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but he's got a sense of humor I can appreciate with that, especially when he's mad at this 4-3 defense in Madden. I can never, ever get over that visual or that memory. But with Perry, I looked at it and I said, okay, I knew enough about Perry and Triple H to know they were both trained by Killer Kowalski. So in a weird way, as I analyzed it in my young, immature wrestling mind, I was saying Perry might have the best shot based on the fact that him and Hunter go way, way, way back. And if you look at it, Perry was kind of the enforcer in the group, the guy who was, I don't know, you look at the group of people, it's like that Simpsons episode with the guy in the middle, and you're like, what's that guy going to do? Perry looked like the most dangerous one in the whole group, like the dude you didn't want to mess with. So that's why I thought Vince would appreciate, plus a legitimate tough guy. Vince always appreciates that too, that they would do something with Perry. But obviously he fell off to the side away from Chris and Eddie.
Can you interpret that any other way with that Moppy thing, that they were intentionally trying to kill his career?
Yeah. Yeah. And people in 2025 be like, nothing can kill a career. Jobs don't hurt. Jobs don't matter. Wins and losses don't matter. Back then it did. And back then they left WCW on bad terms. So they're essentially, in a way, their last stop, at least for that time. And don't think WWF didn't know that. So Perry, he could have had Japan, he could have had other places to go, but not with the notoriety, nor the possibility or the opportunity to make money. So when they did the Moppy thing to him, he got it over. He leaned into it. But at the same time, I'm sure he's talked to you. He knew what they were trying to do. But when they're handing you that, what do? Do you say no and don't be on TV? Or do you sell a ton of Moppy t-shirts? I wore a Moppy t-shirt to the gym. I did.
I didn't know there was a t-shirt.
Yeah, there was a t-shirt of Moppy. Perry wasn't even on it. So he probably didn't even get a royalty check. Oh, sorry, Perry.
Okay, right, I need to ask him that. I will ask him that as well.
Now that I said it and put it in the universe, he was not on the shirt. I can almost say with certainty that the mop got the royalty check.
I mean, you bring up a good point, though. It's either you can have TV time with the stupidest thing in the entire world, or you can not have TV time at all.
Either way, they win. But at least they're going to win and you're going to make some money.
Yeah, good for him for going through it. Obviously, I think he'd leave in 2002 as well. Dean and Perry would leave or retire basically quite soon afterwards, and Eddie and Benoit would continue on and both become world champions later on.
Let me speak about Perry for another minute, please.
Yes, please.
By the way, Perry also, from what I can remember, he had Moppy at conventions and taking photos and signings and stuff like that. Post WWE, I believe. I may be off with that. So he had a convention run is my assumption with the mop, because it's so ridiculous. People are, I'm going to get a picture with the guy with the mop.
He didn't have the mop when I saw him.
How long ago was that?
Last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's well past that now. There's more.
He's done. He's gone through his mop phase.
There's more. Listen, the mop phase compared to what Perry's been through and what he's overcome, you know what I mean? I'm sure he's like, yeah, the mop is just like silly little bump in the road.
Yeah, he's just had double hip surgery and recovering well as well, so I understand. So that's good news for him, and hopefully he'll be moving around more, and he's getting out there more, doing more brisk business on the convention circuit as well, so I'm glad for him.
Now he's mad because they're asking me to bring the damn mop back, Stevie. Thanks.
They are going to. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Perry. Right. Very quickly, just before we get into the what went wrong and what went right, and yes, there is a what went wrong with Eddie, and it'll all become clear in a minute. The Kurt Angle fight, I did write this in the initial draft of the format, and then I realised you were on Raw, you didn't see it. But any news on it?
No, I remember Kurt telling the story, actually, and talking about, like, Eddie trying to like, double or single leg him. And, he's not afraid of anybody. I think that's the way you can encapsulate that.
Maybe you should be afraid of people. Like, maybe you should be afraid of double-legging an Olympic gold medalist wrestler.
Listen, this guy showed his weakness and his flaws when he lost clean to Dude Love. By the way, I still want the gold medals, Kurt. Maybe that's why Eddie was doing it. He's like, I take this guy down, I get a gold medal. And take it back, get it pawned, whatever, lie, cheat, and steal. The only other thing that I witnessed was he and Chris backstage at One Night Stand. That was very tense, and that match was really, that was a struggle, man. And I could tell when they came back, they just had they were in the orbit of each other, but they weren't quite saying. And then it was just like, I remember Chris, I think one of them said, hey man, what happened out there? And then they just kind of talked, walked off, and that was it. That's where I thought there was going to be something. And those guys were as tight as you can get. It was very strange.
Yes, Eddie also in his book, and from other people I spoke to, very much had a temper as well, born out of passion, if nothing else.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the thing is that, like, was Eddie a football player in the past, in high school or
that I don't know.
Because that's the mentality I think of. Like, the emotions are so supercharged that sometimes it just takes a while, or you can't shut it off. And that's why Eddie was so over, because his performances and everything, whether they were happy, intense, sad, whatever they might be, they were his emotions turned up to 11. And people don't realize how incredibly difficult that is sometimes to just switch it off like a light switch. You can't do that.
Right then, I think we need to go on to the what went wrong segment. And once again, yes, there is a what went wrong involving Eddie Guerrero. And because we were talking about the Radicalz just before, I think for his debut match, if people will remember that from 25 years ago, or over 25 years ago, in fact, the what went wrong that I guess it could have even cost him his WWF career if Vince McMahon was in a particularly bad mood, I suppose. But there you go. So this is Eddie Guerrero's debut match in the World Wrestling Federation, where they were going up against the New Age Outlaws, Eddie and Perry. So, Stevie, over to you. What went wrong?
Well, unfortunately, this was basically something that could have been the first and last appearance from Eddie Guerrero in the WWF. And you informed me, James, off camera, I thought he dislocated his elbow, but he had a previous injury and surgery on the elbow. So he overcompensated and ended up injuring the shoulder with this frog splash, which is basically the first bit of wrestling move physicality by Eddie, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, no, this is an entire match, and this happens at the end of the match. So he was wrestling for a few minutes beforehand.
Understood. Okay, let's play it right here. We have a save from Perry. That was a real save, by the way. That was a real save. So Billy Gunn, thoughts and prayers go out to you. That's what led me to believe, even at that time, it was an elbow injury. So let's go slow-mo from here. Tell you the truth, it doesn't look like. Let's go right here. As Perry gets out of the way. Right there, when he turns over, this arm right here and this elbow, as we're circling, when he turns over that, I thought it was just like that on the left side, like my elbow got dislocated, and literally, that's what I thought with that. So you're saying it was a shoulder injury. What was the specific diagnosis from the injury?
Dislocated shoulder.
Oh, man, that's rough. You always run the risk with your elbows, shoulders, knees, even your hips or your lower back from overextending or going too flat on the frog splash. But we kind of get the impact point. They can't do a super, thanks a lot, Perry. Can't really do a super detail what went wrong here because Perry's walking in the way there, but this was also the finish, correct?
Well, it wasn't meant to be the finish.
Oh, he pulled him out. Pulled him out. Okay.
Yeah. So there's more of a story here with this, is that obviously Eddie Guerrero and Perry Saturn were meant to win. And then they were going to have this series of people, remember, it was X-Pac and Dean Malenko. X-Pac won the first match. Then Eddie and Perry were meant to defeat the Outlaws and make it 1-1 before Triple H and Chris Benoit wrestled, I think, in the main event to see if the Radicalz would actually win a contract in the WWF. And with this, it ended up going 2-0 to the D-Generation X crew because Eddie actually said that he panicked and he basically started screaming at Road Dogg, "Pin me."
Yeah. What I'm seeing here, though, you're talking about the shoulder, but look at what he's gripping right away based on the past injury and surgery, I'm sure. So it reverberated all up his arm. So he dislocated the shoulder, but I'm sure it was radiating down right here to the elbow. So what would be your first thought be? Not a brand new injury, but a reoccurring injury. And now I got to get surgery on this again. But he was not out for very long. A dislocated shoulder, he could have torn his rotator cuff. When you're doing a frog splash or any kind of splash, like when Rob does his 5-star, and even Montez Ford in modern times doing the 5-star, you have such a chance of everything from your, like I said, your lower body all the way up to your neck. And the way Montez and Rob do it, boom, springing and almost doing a front bump over the guy. It's just such a rough move, and people don't understand how hard this ring is, especially now when they're coming into this ring, the size of the ring, and maybe this is what happened. Eddie felt like, remember, we're talking about a much bigger ring. You see how Eddie's kind of reaching out here to stretch out to hit that splash? Because how many splashes has Eddie done in the ECW ring, in a WCW ring, even in Mexican rings, which basically are not as big as WWE rings? Did they have this 6 and 8-sided ring back when Eddie was working?
In TNA?
No, in Mexico.
I don't think so, no.
No, I think it was a 4-sided ring. But this ring here, I can see him, it's just me guessing from this. You see how he's really, usually when Eddie hits the frog splash, he's coming straight down into this. Do you see the angle that he has right here? Kind of going out. He's reaching, kind of like trying to spread out his body more, which means this arm and elbow right here are overextending. So maybe the reason why is because he was thinking, I have to reach Billy Gunn for the frog splash. So instead of going up and then down and hitting it, he's almost skimming him in a way, and therefore the elbow goes like that and ends up dislocating the shoulder. Can you kind of see that?
There was something else I wanted to ask you. If you go back a few frames where he's just leaping off, and I'm wondering if he's tilting slightly and favouring his left-hand side, because he seems to be not going directly down, but he seems to be leaning down on his left-hand side slightly.
Well, here's my question.
See what I mean? Right there.
Was the left elbow the injury or the right elbow?
It was the left shoulder that was the...
No. Before that, the surgery he had, where you're saying...
That's an interesting one. Yeah, I don't know, because if he was trying to not get injured on his right elbow,
then he
may be trying to come down harder on his left.
Yeah, that's a good speculation with that, because why would you favor the left side when it's already injured? So, and also, see it right here, he's taped up. Yeah, we're not getting cut off with the new green screen. Now, you're happy about that. Turkey likes that. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't like the fact that my friend got injured. I don't like the fact what mentally and emotionally Eddie must have been going through, coming back from this injury. Now he has a match. It's the middle of something that means something, right? A series of matches with DX. And here he is getting hurt this early. Every wrestler in existence, whether it's your first match or thousands in a company, if you're lucky enough to be there for that long, you think once you're injured, what are you thinking, James, and assuming? I'm losing my spot. They're not going to use me. I'm injury prone and they're just going to relegate me. And I'm in a group, so they're going to feature the other guys and kind of leave me behind. That's usually what really happens more times than not. But that's a great call. Yeah, his right elbow is taped. So as he comes down, but here's the thing. He landed with both elbows at the same time. Like he stretched out and hit it. So all I could think of is, it's just my assumption once again, look at the way, just before he lands, do you see the angle? Knees first, and then up like this. Usually Eddie just comes straight down with the splash, much like Rob does, Montez Ford. It's literally up and down. Even though he does go out and he hits it like that, in this way, he's reaching. So in my mind, it takes a while to adjust to the size of the ring. We talked about the TNA 6-sided ring, but what did I say that was going to be even scarier than adjusting from WWE's 4-sided ring, 20 by 20, to a 6-sided ring? If I ever went back to WWE and I have to really relearn that ring and how big it is, it's easier in a way sometimes to go from a bigger ring to a smaller ring rather than a smaller ring to a bigger ring, running the ropes, jumping off the top rope. I know how to run off the ropes. Jumping off the top rope is more Eddie's speed, not mine. But this is just a freak accident. Was he overcompensating? Possibly. But I believe this is kind of one of those things. Maybe Eddie was trying so hard that he overcompensated mentally and physically, ended up trying to do like a really tight frog splash, or maybe, hey, I'm brand new to the company. You know what I need to do? I need to protect this guy. I need to protect Billy Gunn and not hurt him, because then I'll get a bad reputation that my frog splash hurts and nobody will want to take it. Any and all of these things could be running through his mind. Did he address this in his book at all?
Yeah, he said he was overcompensating for the elbow.
There you go. But we didn't know which elbow. I'm assuming the right one, like you said, that's taped up right there. So, and you want the weather while I'm up here? Do you want to know like the 7-day forecast or anything?
Now, hang on, you're making fun of yourself. You made such a big deal of this green screen as well as the.
I hope it's not a huge disappointment to anybody.
Hey, before you sit down, actually, you're going to do what went right in a second. This is maybe Eddie's first ever time using ropes.
Oh, wow. That's an amazing point. So his jump off point, let's see him going up. So look, see the little foot movement there? I'm going to zoom in. Where his foot is, right here, you see a little bit of a kind of rocking back and forth. When he gets up, he's like, that little step right there could be a brand new feeling to Eddie. And also thinking, maybe he thought in a way like the overcompensation part of it, not only the elbow, but because it's not taut cable, I really need to push down and out so I don't slip. So, because there's no momentum with those ropes. They're not bouncing back up like a cable. So Eddie's essentially launching himself from beginning to end on these ropes. That's what makes it really impressive that Eddie, Rob, Montez Ford, even Dominic can get any sort of height and distance doing the frog splash, because it's not a bouncy trampoline like the cables are.
Right, Stevie, just before you get to sit down, we have a what went right, and this is, of course, the lying and cheating and stealing of Eddie Guerrero, but most importantly, the cheating that you want to address in 2005 when he sort of started becoming a babyface again after, you know, the whole Rey Mysterio, Dominic on a pole match from SummerSlam. So over to you, Stevie, then. What went right, and why is Eddie Guerrero one of the greatest cheaters of all time?
Thank you very much, James. And we mean cheating in the wrestling sense and the sports entertainment sense. He's the greatest cheater to ever live. And you told me that he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. You repeated that here. That is so weird, because we're missing out on basically, how should I say, infinite tributes to Eddie Guerrero, even in 2025. Rey Mysterio doing it, Dominic, they're playing his music at WrestleMania, people are reacting. But This is the origin story of why people are so, I guess, endeared to Eddie Guerrero cheating, lying, and stealing. So the first one I think is the most famous one with Ken Kennedy. You might remember him post talent meeting. This Ken Kennedy, right? This guy. But as Booker T would say, this guy. So let's go here. Whips him. Oh my God. Do we really have the Easter egg of the most evil wrestling referee ever in history, Charles Robinson? This compilation has it all. But here he goes. Charles takes a bump. Eddie, this is what's right here. Right here. He looks and sees Charles is down, and that face. You know what's coming. The people, this is where Vince, for everybody that makes fun of Vince McMahon, this is how we make our money. This is a money shot right here on Eddie Guerrero that basically says, I'm about to cheat. So there's a cue right here for this. And he's laughing, he's smirking, more smirking. Okay, I know what I'm going to do here. And basically goes outside, gets the chair, and I think everybody knows what's going to happen next. He's looking, teasing that he's going to hit him with the chair, and then looks and sees the referee's coming up, hits, makes the sound, and here you go, Kennedy. Goes down. This one's for Stevie Richards. There's Charles saying, I didn't get to hit him with the chair. But back it up. Charles is mad right here because this guy here wanted to use the chair not only on these two wrestlers, but my guess, my speculation, every single fan in the audience. And if he had his way, he would go to each and every one of your homes and hit you over the head with a chair. I'm just assuming that. This is so amazing. By the way, in wrestling, maybe in real world too, if you cheat, people tend to love you. I don't know why. So there he goes right there. Eddie's smiling but selling at the same. That little thing right there. We got to go back. I love this. Smile and sells the head. So he's still selling a move that was never done. There he is right there. And Eddie's still selling his head. Still selling his head right there. Kind of. How can you not laugh at this? He raised his hand. Charles finally did the right thing. Finally did the right thing. Good on you, Charles.
But he didn't do the right thing.
Listen, do I have to explain this once again? Let's go back to Eddie so we can get a shot at him. Right there. Come on, he's obviously been hit with a chair. You don't know any better. You don't know me. There you go. Also, if I can remind everybody out there that you can commit a felony on professional wrestling TV. You can lie, cheat, steal, hit people with cars, electrify them, put jumper cables on their genitals, on their testicles, and it's A-okay. So let's just suspend a little disbelief, James. Teleprompter's over here. But he won the match. Amazing stuff. So Kurt has him in the ankle lock right here. Eddie's fighting. Is he going to cheat? Is he going to reach for the ropes? Always a ref bump. The only thing we could hope for is that, like, Charles Robinson is at a lot of these, but he's not. He probably switched plays with Brian Hebner. There he is again. Dude, right there. It's such a simple formula. Something happens, happenstance, by accident. Eddie doesn't do it on purpose, or does he? And then Eddie looks around, sees the situation, does a shrug of the shoulders, a little bit of a smirk, and you know something creative and fun is about to happen. So let's take a look here. Once again, going outside. Oh, did he legitimately hurt his ankle there?
No, I think he's selling the ankle lock.
Oh, see, I forgot.
Well, you forgot the wrestlers used to sell things.
Thanks for making me watch the modern product. So here he comes back into the ring here. I remember the match, but I still don't remember how Eddie cheated. So I'm watching this going, what's he going to do? Years, it's not decades later, say, what's going to happen? How can you not laugh? And Kurt, he's right into his hand, and Kurt's grabbing at it just because instinctively, now he grabs the chair. This is great.
Dude, do you know this is the match where Kurt and Eddie had the fight afterwards?
Are you serious?
I think this might be the one, because I know Luther Reigns was involved in it.
That's amazing. I love Kurt. You know, Kurt playing along. This is where an Olympic gold medalist is actually like as legitimate as you get. Okay? Even with the loss, the clean loss to Dude Love. He's as legitimate as you get, but Kurt will play the fool. He's literally saying, Eddie hit me with a chair as he's holding a chair. There's so much just tiny nuance and detail here. He's still there. Here we go with the Bashrams, I believe.
I kind of have to correct myself. It might not have been that match, because I think Mark Jindrak and Luther Reigns were involved. So maybe it was that match, maybe it wasn't, but I don't want to... I'm sort of half going back just in case I'm wrong, but it was around that time. It was late 2004.
Well, they've wrestled each other so much that, you know what I mean? You could say, how many times did they wrestle on SmackDown? It's kind of like Edge and Kurt Angle. They wrestled a ton on SmackDown. So here he is with Danny Basham, I believe, right? There's Doug and Danny. What's he got? The Cat of Nine Tails, the schoolboy. In today's WWE, you know what they would tell Eddie to do? To do it every single week for like 20,000 weeks. They used it sparingly here and gave him different ways to cheat. Really great stuff. Here goes Eddie again. It's this every time, right? Every time it's that smile. And you know it's about to happen. Now I think he puts the belt on Ray's chest here. Tries to wake the ref up. But Ray gets over on Eddie here as well, I think, with that. That was great. Look at Eddie's reaction. Look at this. Look at him, Tony. This is David Crockett. Now he's covering the belt because he got caught. Nobody hit anybody with the belt. It's the threat and the hint of violence. Eddie, look at Ray. Let me ask you a question. Is this babyface versus babyface where they're just kind of working each other?
No, I get the feeling Eddie's the heel here. Because this must have been the Dominic on a pole era.
The reason why I'm asking is because Eddie was smiling and the people were reacting almost like he was a babyface.
Maybe.
But this could have been the beginning of that.
Was there a period? Because I thought he was immediately heel against Ray. Didn't they wrestle at WrestleMania 21?
Yes, I believe so. That was a ladder match, right?
No, that was SummerSlam, I think.
The WrestleMania match was one of their best ones, I believe, the 21.
I remember as a fan thinking, because I was expecting WCW level, but, you know, they were older and obviously Eddie was injured far more, and I remember it being like a more of a slow plodding affair.
But I remember it being better because the storyline really carried it. I mean, I don't know. You can split hairs of what you think is better. They're all great matches. So let's take a look here. He's covering. I can't get over this. This is just so amazing. And Eddie's a tag champ with Chavo, correct? That's or are they?
Ooh, who was tag champ?
Yeah, I was going to say, was he tag champs with Ray too at one point?
Okay, so this is actually confusing. So in 2003, Eddie was tag champs with Tajiri, which I don't remember. Los Guerreros twice. And then Eddie was tag team champions with Rey Mysterio. Well remembered. They won it No Way Out, February 20th, 2005, which was Pittsburgh.
Well, we'll see the rest of this finish and see if Ray has a tag belt as well. That'll indicate whether he's champs with Ray or somebody else. But let's just take a look. He's begging right there. There he is against Tajiri right here. So he's wrestling Tajiri. And this here, that little thing right there, by the way, watch the little, no, ref turns his back, little smirk right there. Really good stuff. Now this whole thing here, James and everybody, this whole thing here is kind of a finish within the finish. You know what I mean? Is the ref going to DQ him? Did the ref catch him? Can Eddie convince the referee he didn't do it? You know, there's all these different things that grab your attention in the steps leading up to the final finish. Do you feel that way? Like you're paying attention and seeing, maybe it's not a WCW Cruiserweight match or anything like that, but the story and the predictability of the fun of it all. And then, will it go this way? Will it go this way? Are they going to throw it out? How's Eddie going to react if he does get away with it? How's Eddie going to react if he doesn't get away with it? This is like the ultimate choose your own adventure in your mind finish. And it's so much fun. There you go. There's a little wrinkle right there with the mist. And those kicks hurt. Trust me. I know better than anybody else. Now, this is strange too. He has the tag belt here, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Who's he champ with?
Could have been Tajiri, could have been Chavo, could have been Ray.
Is he fighting his part? Let's see what we have. Belt shot. Wakes him up. By the way, I have to give production a lot of credit. I don't know how much of the mist got in his face. We saw with Asuka when she blew the mist in Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss. They didn't get in their face. But just in case, they covered up. Kyoto covered up. They covered it. When he turned him over, he poured it. And before anybody could see how much mist got on his face, it looked like all the water took the mist off. Just a little thing, but it really matters. All right, so here he goes for the frog splash. Nice. There's the evil Eddie. Do you see the difference, by the way? Do you notice the difference in the frog splash? Like out, but straight down. That one on Billy Gunn, he was reaching out, trying to reach him. But watch. Boom. Nice camera cut there. And 1, 2, 3. Here's the strange thing about it. Do you notice whether he's a babyface or a heel? What are the people doing when Eddie starts to cheat? No matter who it's against. They cheer. They loved him no matter what. I mean, they kind of, I don't know how much they loved him during the Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio custody ladder match.
They loved him. Come off. They loved it. Do you see how many people wearing t-shirts saying, I'm your pappy?
I remember
Come
that.
on.
Strange. You can't, I guess you just can't hate Eddie Guerrero. And that's an amazing thing. I love the guy. Even now, I mean, gone. Looking at all this stuff, I just think about what could Eddie have accomplished as a character 20 years later. But guess what? He's still accomplishing things after he's gone. Like you said, he's more popular than ever. If that's a high mark to hit right there from this. But he's more popular in 2025 than even 20 years ago.
Right, so we've got a couple of bits of news before we end the show. We were going to do the turnbuckle thing. That is just going to have to wait for another episode. I'm sorry, Stevie. I'll say sorry. I'm sure you're glad that you didn't have to spend another 10 minutes setting up the shot.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, with the green screen, I'm really excited about it. And then I forgot how much I sweat during the standing smartboard thing. And also, you and I both, when we wear lav mics as opposed to these mics, we feel like we're shouting at the camera. So a lot of adjustments. I did like days of testing, you know that, and it still like didn't feel clean. So hopefully people enjoy it enough to watch it. We're going to try to make effort to make it better.
So we're going to get on this one. Goldberg he was accused of walking out of a signing, and you were interested to talk about this as well. Especially because I mentioned some stories that one or two of them I got from you or had corroborated through you as well with some of the issues that you've experienced over the years. Anyway, Goldberg appeared at the big event EXS over the weekend. That's convention signing and whatnot. A Facebook post from K&S WrestleFest, a vendor at the event, claimed that Goldberg was supposed to sign items for them but walked out early after doing another private signing for another vendor. The initial post was, unfortunately, Goldberg's private signing did not happen. We had all our items laid out ready to sign as Goldberg was doing another private for another vendor. After he was done, he got up and said he was done. He walked out past our stuff and left. We were all super disappointed and frustrated. My apologies to all. Now, that social media post has since been removed. And the big event EXS promoter, the person who actually held the event and was paying Goldberg, I guess, he's called Tom Unger. He says that K&S's claims are not true. Unger replied to the post and said that Goldberg signed for 5 hours for him, which was, I guess, all he was contracted for. And Ken of K&S was told Goldberg would sign for them if there was time. Well, Evidently, there wasn't time because Goldberg didn't sign, and he got up and left and went off to catch a flight home. So, the quote from Tom Unger was, no, he wasn't, I believe, guaranteed or signed. He wasn't signed to a contract, basically, to do this. Goldberg was signing for his fans for 5 hours straight. Ken of KNS wasn't guaranteed anything. I told him if we had time, we would get your items done. He shouldn't be posting this all over like the victim. This was my deal, and my customers come first. Shouldn't take mail order from all you not knowing if it was going to get done or not. So, once again, the third-party vendor didn't allegedly have a contract that he signed with Goldberg. I don't know if he was pre-selling these pre-orders, saying that they were signed when there wasn't that agreement in place or not. I don't know that at this point. But you've done conventions in the past, Stevie. You don't do them now for, I guess, reasons like this, where there can be, at the very least, misunderstandings.
Yeah, I mean, you can call it a misunderstanding, but there are patterns. Patterns with the workers that we talked about showing up, best foot forward, but also it goes to the other part of it as well, the promoters, the vendors, the autograph people, all sorts of people that are involved on the other end of it. They have their own pattern, and for lack of a better word, they like to work the boys. They like to figure out how they can squeeze. It's very much promoter and wrestler, promoter and talent, no matter what category it is, whether it's a show where you physically perform, a signing, an appearance, whatever it might be, there's this strange push back on each other and kind of like cat and mouse game that you play. And that's why I haven't done them in a long time. And maybe people don't care. It doesn't matter either way to me, but I don't want to play that dance. I don't want to have somebody talk to me and tell me I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. Then when I give them a fee, or Bill Barron's or somebody gives them a fee, then they start to give all the flaws. You haven't been on TV in years. You're not that popular. You never won a match. Do you see what I mean? You play. I don't need to even put myself in those situations. It's a very easy thing that gets overcomplicated. If you want Goldberg to sign something, what they do, and this, I'm not saying KNS is doing this specifically or intentionally, but I've been involved with many people that not by intention, but I'm signing at some convention or dedicated space. Then somebody happens to show up and say, hey, after you're done that, you have 30 minutes to sign this. And then sometimes people, if you say, well, what's the fee? What are you paying? I have to drive home, fly home. They're like, well, once it goes with brother, you're in trouble. Brother, you're already here. It's kind of like when there's a local show and somebody goes, hey, we want to bring you in. Okay, well, here's my fee. Oh, well, you don't have to fly and you don't have to get a hotel. And I go, you don't have to pay for a flight. You don't have to pay for it's just, why have the conversation? It never turns out well. But I don't blame Goldberg. We've talked about Goldberg and all this stuff in the past. This is not Bill's fault. Bill showed up, by the way, 5 hours, dude. That's a long time to sign. It's a gift. It's not a real job, but signing for 5 hours is pretty tough, for somebody. Now, if you're getting 50 grand, I'd sign for 10 hours. But then again, you have these people that just wait in the wings with a pile of 8x10s, action figures, trading cards, all the above, other stuff. And they're just trying to see if they can siphon some of the time and make some of the money. Is it all of them? No. Is it more than there should be? Usually.
Yeah, 45, 50 grand. But I made the argument on my video is that the reason he charges that much is because he knows what his signature is worth. And if it's worth so much, and he knows to the person or to the piece that he's going to sign for, he will know how much will be generated from that ultimately, and how much he is worth. More
accurate, his representation. Mm-hmm. He has a manager, he has an agent. These are the people that are booking Goldberg. And they get a percentage of booking him, so he doesn't have to deal with this kind of BS.
Yeah,
to lead up to it.
But they'll only want the promoter to make so much as well. You don't want to have the promoter make triple the amount that the star makes, of course. So,
and you don't want the promoter to lose money because you would love to come back or have another opportunity. Mm-hmm. It's a symbiotic dance that can go wrong pretty quickly and pretty bad. Yeah, but Goldberg, and his representation know what he's worth. He gets the money. This isn't his first signing from what I know. So he's getting the money to do it. And from what all I've seen with Bill, and we talked about Bill in the past, Bill Goldberg. No, I'm sorry. But Bill is about the most fan-friendly, child-friendly, disarming talent there could be when you're there as a fan. He's one of the best people you can book for a signing. You're going to get the interaction. You're not going to get head down and sign. From what I've seen and from what I've heard, he will engage with the people. Now, we've talked about both sides of this. There needs to be a heavy there to move the line along, because there's boys out there and probably girls. Hey, brother, and that's how the trouble starts. My 3 hours are up, but there's 150, 200 people in the line. Let's go 50-50 or pay me more of a fee. So nobody's innocent and nobody's guilty at the same time. Everybody has an issue.
I don't know if this was on the Patreon, but I said, I've been to a couple of conventions, just wandering around. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm just sort of kind of seeing how they work. And then when I went to the one in Philly for several days, I'm trying to sort of work out this like weird dance that everyone does around each other. And I was saying, it's part grift, it's a lot grift. It's just odd people there, really good people there, some people who are just desperate to be associated with the business at any point just so they can be called brother by one wrestler, ironically, or something. I don't know. Like, the whole life is leading up to it. And I'm not talking about the fans whatsoever. I'm just talking about all the hangers-on and, people who want to be sort of part of the whole circus, I guess, in some way or another. I just found it weird, man. But with Goldberg, once again, as I've heard the same thing, great guy outside the ring, especially with the fans, everyone says. I'm sure he could be a malcontent with promoters and everything else, but that's probably because he knows what they're like.
Do you blame him?
Yeah, that's what he knows what they're like.
I mean? He's basically showing you, like, why is Goldberg have a problem with Vince McMahon? Why does Goldberg have a problem with Triple H? Why does Goldberg have a problem with somebody trying to have him to do a bonus signing that he wasn't even committed to do after 5 hours, by the way? Let's not forget that. It's $10,000 an hour or whatever it's going to be, but every minute of that, Goldberg's not going over, and you're not going to have a dead line with Goldberg. Like, if I had nobody, I would turn to talk to somebody, but more times than not, I'm going to be present for the entire signing. My assumption and what I witnessed in past signings, that's Bill. Bill's not wandering off and I got to do that. He'll take a bathroom break, of course, but Bill knows he's there being paid, and people, more importantly, the fans, have paid money to get a Goldberg experience. But these little things that you vilified, and also this thing of trying to say that, sorry, Bill let everybody down. Are they leaving details out? Because it sounds like the other guy who booked Goldberg is providing details that weren't provided before.
That was my first question. Is like, did you have an agreement? Because apparently not. But, painting out Goldberg as the bad guy there. This is why,
it's easy to dunk on Goldberg. It's just easy to crap on him right now. And that's why this show, we're very objective with it. Bill is absolutely, with the details we've been provided outside of K&S saying he had signed after this to sign with us. That's a whole different story. But if it stands with the details and the events as they are right now, that Bill's 100% in the right. It's all I'm paid to do. I give 100%. And everybody else, I've been there on a smaller level. I'm about to finish the signing. The line's dying down, and I can see it out of the corner of my eye, much like you can at the conventions. Here they come. Hey, brother. Yes, it always starts with brother. You're already here. Do you mind doing this? And I've been the victim. You said it in your solo video on the James Romero channel. Check it out. I've been the victim of people sending me stuff or the piles at the convention. And what I would do is sign, and I'm counting, and I put them in piles of 10. And then there was one time at a convention where the guy tried to get slick and start gathering up the piles in the one pile. Only he didn't know. as I look off camera, I was writing it down on loose leaf sheet with a little 1 and then the cross through the 5, 50, 100. Dude tried to add an extra like 200 pictures.
How many did you actually sign? Like if it's 250 and then like somehow 450. I can understand if they try and slip in an extra 10 or 20.
Count. I don't trust them. I'm paranoid. I don't trust them. And guess what? They give you every right to be paranoid, right?
Yeah.
They give you a right to put the walls up and do everything you need to do to protect your brand and not be. And then I'm not saying I've never been taken advantage of. Do you want to hear another famous? This is so indie or shindy, as Ben Hameen would say.
Please.
I'm talking about shows. This was a pattern until my wife told me, you need to know your worth and stop doing this. Back when I worked with Raven, it worked for us. If we worked for a little bit less, they would use us more. More opportunity for merch sales, pictures. We made more back then. What happened in, say, before COVID, like 2015, 16, when I started to get tired of it all, basically this one promoter, it was always the same guy, and he forgot he would call me with this. It was like weird. He had like a CTE or something. So he'd call me like a week out of his show and say, hey, and this is the best part. And I don't know why I was such an idiot to take the booking, because they would insult you in such a way like, hey, brother. And I'm not kidding. That's how it always started. This should be a hey, brother clip. So he would basically say, hey, so-and-so backed out a week before the show. Do you mind coming in and filling in? You're a drive away. I'm going to pay you less. I'll pay you this much. But trust me, brother, my next show, you're going to get your full fee. Guess what happened?
I don't need
Never called me for the next show. But 3 to 4 months later, guess what? The same exact phone call. I fell for it once, not the second time. And guess what happened? That dude buried me to other promoters saying I was unprofessional and I didn't do good business.
You know, when I was saying on the Patreon and a bit here, it's like I never would want to be part of that lifestyle. That's exactly what it is. You know, you're just beholden to just a bunch of scumbags who either want you to have everything on their terms or they can attempt to destroy your career. You know?
Yeah, and well, by that point, I didn't have a career anyway, and I didn't want to be in the business at that point anyway. But this is, in my estimation, it was just like I had to measure, and this is where I talked about also on Patreon, where in 2025, I talked to people that are still engaging in this buffoonery. And I refuse to sanction this buffoonery, as Tommy Lee Jones famously said, because I want to meet the fans. I want to give people an experience. I want to be able to work with promoters and people at conventions to be able to give everybody the best experience. Because guess what? I'm showing up in the best shape I can, looking as much as I can, like I did on the 8x10. And of course, making the people say, that was a great experience. Not all these wrestlers are jerks, because you're going to meet a few. But guess what? It's just not worth it at this point because of the buffoonery, because of the dance. You witnessed it from a distance as a third party, and you said, no effing way. Imagine having to do it. And I talk to people that still tell me, oh, I got to do this, and I got to talk to this guy like he knows what he's doing, and this is his WrestleMania. And I'm like, as Tom Brady would say, you can keep it.
Matt Cardona ended up in a shoving match with somebody. I don't know why or who.
Really?
Yeah. Someone filmed it and put it online as well, so I don't even know if it was just, set up or anything. Not on Matt's part, I don't know, but he ended up in a shoving match with somebody who tried to get in his face, and it wasn't like just someone signing, I think. It was someone, I don't know if it was another vendor or whatever. And then, there was another argument between a couple of people that I saw. I just walked around, I had the pass and everything, and I just tried to learn as much as possible.
Everybody, Matt Cardona.
Matt
the guy
Cardona.
Who couldn't be more excited to be there at a convention, not only as a wrestler, but as a fan, to get his action figures, to talk, get pictures. You talk about one of the easiest guys he's right up there with Goldberg. As far as he's a pleasure. If you book him and you adhere to the agreement, you're never going to get an easier experience with those two guys. Hey, book Raven, see what happens.
Oh, yeah, he didn't show up for the first 2 hours. And it was a 5-hour slot.
I'm just saying.
Which is why that's all I need to know to never, ever book Raven ever for anything.
But he's the majority, not the minority. The minority is the Matt Cardonas and the Goldbergs. Unfortunately, the carny behavior, the grift, now has to be spilled over into people that just want to do an honest business transaction. Think about how many people wanted to book certain guys, and this includes PJ, they're still trying to book him for some goofy reason to be the one to book Just Incredible, to get the moment or TMZ or whatever it might be. It's never for anything other than nefarious reasons. Unlike you, Bill Goldberg. You don't know me.
I do know you very. That's why I sigh so much. I'm starting to sigh like.
Green screen. Oh my God. Wednesday. Oh my God.
Hey, after 12 minutes, I deserve to sigh after that setup. My goodness me, you couldn't hear me for any minute. Right. Speaking of Matt Cardona, in fact, Matt Cardona. Well, all right. Let's be specific here. Zack Ryder and Dolph Ziggler turned up on SmackDown and Raw, respectively, this past Monday and this past Friday, to be part of the first round of the Last Time Is Now John Cena tournament to determine his final opponent for his retirement match, December 13th. Saturday night's main event, Washington, D.C. I wanted your opinion, maybe more on Matt than anything else, actually, because I thought it was very interesting that they brought him back as Zack Ryder, because he has been Matt Cardona on NXT, and he got great reaction, whatever. On SmackDown with Zack Ryder, you got the initial thing, and then I think people would have reacted more if he was just Matt Cardona. I think he's one of the few people who've gotten over the stink of the WWE run to make more of themselves, and not even in another company, on the indies, which I think is a huge tribute to him.
And also, they put it right back on him, that stink, when they called him Zack Ryder back in his... Now, there could be a double-edged thing in a good way with that, too. A blessing as well as a curse. Because here's the insanity of wrestling. Matt Cardona didn't do the job. Matt Cardona is still strong on the indies. Zack Ryder did the job. You can convince some promoters of that. I was a little shocked, I would say, not even surprised. But what didn't surprise me is this. Where was SmackDown on last Friday as we're recording this?
I don't know.
Albany, New York. Where was Monday Night Raw? New York City.
It was Madison Square Garden, wasn't it?
Why didn't they bring him back? He would have got a much bigger reaction in the Garden, closer to Long Island. Dare I say it, Albany's still New York, but you're talking about way up by Syracuse and Buffalo. It's a world away. What was the point in doing that? Dolph Ziggler and him could have switched spots very easily. And Dolph did an incredible job against Solo. But as a worker, and I might be a little bit, admittedly, I don't know, out of touch with my thinking with this, because I would think that coming back, unless you signed a full-time deal, which I am not aware that he signed a full-time deal with WWE. If he did, I get it. If he didn't, which you're shaking your head, what I'd be worried about is, did your stock drop on the indies? Did your price drop on the indies based on you coming back and putting somebody over for a one-off? And as a worker, you know what they did at the monitor? He went into, I'm not saying this is a mean thing, like I would laugh too, and I would say the same thing. He looked at the camera, did his thing, and said, "I'm back." And then he got pinned, and I'm sure somebody at the monitor said, "He's gone." I'd laugh at that as a worker because he's obviously excited. He deserves it. He looks great. He got himself over without the machine. And dare I say it, he got himself over way more over than the machine could ever get him. So what now? As a guy who cares about Matt and his career, and he's one, like I just said about the conventions, he's an asset and an ambassador to the entire wrestling business. We need more Matt Cardonas in the business. Why would they do that to him? And why, I mean, unless he wants to get a job to be with his wife, Chelsea Green. I get that. But guess what? If they wanted to hire you, wouldn't they have already hired you? What are you trying out for? You're already on it. You already came back on NXT. They've been watching you. Wasn't he working Evolve? He's working Game Changer. All these different places over the course of years. What are you being tested for?
Right, okay. I think, and you'll appreciate this, you'll know where I'm going with this. Matt Cardona, in interviews, has been very open with the fact that he wants a full-time contract again with WWE. And need I say more? If you're that overt with the idea that, saying, I want this is my goal. I mean, is there still enough people spiteful enough in WWE to not give him that purposely because they know they've got him over a barrel now, basically. He wants something, we can give it him, we don't have to, kind of thing.
And there's one judge of that says he's not over. He doesn't draw. And that guy's in charge of everything right now. So if that guy thinks, nah, whatever, that's where I'm confused by it. I understand it. And I know Matt has probably stayed in contact with the office even during the Vince era and now into the Triple H era, however long he's been communicating with it. And they know exactly what Matt has been doing. They know exactly who Matt is, what he looks like, the excellent worker he is, the guy that got himself over. But yeah, I talked about a God complex earlier in this episode. You got over, just like the first time. Hey, you got over. But we didn't do it, and we don't get the credit. So therefore, remember The Rock cut the promo post-show at the same building that they didn't book him on, Madison Square Garden. And they're going, woo, 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 post-show, post-Raw. I think it was when Rock, he had the angle with Miz and Truth. Remember that? And they had the tag match at Survivor Series. Yeah. I think it was after that or the Raw after that. And he looked and he goes, yeah, I know you, woo, woo, woo. I get it. I wish he was. He wasn't even in the building. Or he was even worse, backstage and wasn't allowed to come out. Dude, that company does not change their mind about somebody at this point. I hope to God I'm wrong. But the dude, what more can Matt do? What more can Dolph Ziggler do? He took the bet. I've never seen Solo Sikoa look that good. Ben Hameen said this about Dolph Ziggler. I think it's the same. He's Mr. Perfect, and in some ways, he's better than Mr. Perfect. He's at least as good as Mr. Perfect. Why they never did. These are two guys. And by the way, they're very close friends from what I understand. So they can at least form a support group of why this stupid company has dropped the ball in the past and then refuses to pick the ball back up right now. So what happens to Matt Cardona on the Indies? What does Dolph Ziggler do when he goes back to TNA? Oh, they didn't. Nick Nemeth didn't do the job. Dolph Ziggler did. Now it's my turn to sigh.
With that, would you have just brought him in as Matt? Because I probably said this at the beginning of this segment, but Matt is more over than Zach ever was. And if you sort of look back at over a dozen years of Zack Ryder, it kind of boils down to it's the YouTube guy who got punished for trying to make a better situation for himself within WWE, but it wasn't on WWE's watch, so therefore they wouldn't let it happen. Or he's the guy who John Cena stole his girlfriend, or he looked into an IC title reign for a day. And they throw him the smallest morsel.
I don't know about the Cena thing. Is that Matt?
Yeah, it's Zack Ryder, I think. That's an on-screen thing.
Cena stole his girlfriend? I didn't even know about that.
No, that's a storyline thing from many years ago.
That's where Kane put him off the ramp with the wheelchair.
Yeah, and then there was the wheelchair, right? And then there was everything. It's like, I'm sighing now. But Matt did so much more than that.
Do you want to hear a story? You may know this story. Zack Ryder, who is no longer with WWE is in the area and wants to use his pool for a vignette. He would not let them use the pool.
Good.
They don't forget that. They don't forget. And that might be why he hasn't been in the company for however many years. Why would any sane person in the real world, you fire me and now you want to use my, You're not even paying me a salary to pay this house off, but you want to use part of my house for a vignette that doesn't even involve me. No way.
There's something to be said, though. Dolph was there for, what, like 19 years or something ridiculous in WWE. Matt was there for over a dozen years as well. And I did say, either on the Patreon, one of my complaints with WWE in the past 20 years or 25 years, whatever, is there's relatively little roster turnover. And I miss the ideas, someone would be in for a year or 2 years, 3 years, disappears, go to WCW or ECW and back and forth, when there were more companies to do that and everything was a far more fluid situation. Now, these days, contracts are harder to get out of. They're longer. Some of them are 5 years, or even more in a couple of cases, I think they are. Just by that very virtue, things just feel more stagnant than they otherwise would be back in the old days where, people would be signed for 2 years maybe, quit, leave, do the 90 days, go somewhere else, be just as visible as they were before, but then they're fresh again. Do you think WWE sort of feels the same way that, well, these guys were here for, over 30 years combined in WWE for the most part, that it's just their time to do something else and maybe they'll bring him back not like Drew McIntyre, who disappeared for a few years, reinvented himself, and was more valuable when he came back. But do you just think
they still haven't done Drew right?
Gee, have they not? It. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. They were already doing their best work outside of WWE. And dare I say it, they were making a living, or a really good living. Talking about Matt, especially Matt, with the action figures, the merchandise, hustling. He was the original one to do. He took what Colt Cabana was doing and turned it up to over 11, right? Really, tons of multiple streams of income. And Dolph went and did what he needed to do to reinvent himself with some of his best work in TNA. I don't get it. And they can say, well, we gave him the world title and cashed in, and then you didn't do anything. The Zack Ryder wins the IC title at WrestleMania in Dallas, I believe, where his dad came and he was so mad because dad put the cowboy hat on him. He's like, get that hat off me. But
then lost in a day.
That should have been, those used to be the spots. Once you got to it, you were set. You were made. You were there. Now, if you win a title, it's the beginning of the end. That's the company's fault. I hate this thing like, well, they didn't get over. Well, guess what? They proved your stupid theory wrong, Triple H and Vince McMahon, because they got way more over without your supposed multi-billion-dollar machine behind them. How does that work? You explain it to me. Guess why? Because you aren't as good as you think you are, and they're every bit better than you thought they were. That's why.
Who did you think had the better match, Dolph or... I'm not talking about... Okay, who had the better showing rather than the better match? Who you thought made the bigger impact, Zack Ryder or Dolph?
You mean as far as maybe getting a contract or a long-term job?
Potentially, yeah. I think that may be what I'm getting at, yeah.
Dolph, 100% Dolph. Because when I watched match with Solo, I said Solo looks good. He's never looked like that good with somebody physically in a match, and that's Dolph. That's on him. So if the Stevie Richards spot, right? It announced Dolph Ziggler because he's been putting people over and make them look good for 2 decades in WWE and now TNA and back in WWE. When I'm looking at that, I can say he can make the people we have figured in look like megastars, look like superstars. Zack Ryder made the LA Knight look good, but man, I've never seen anybody take that spike, whether it's Umaga, Solo, or anybody else. The bump that Dolph took off the spike looked like it killed him. Right there, that's a contract bump right there. He can make anybody look good. And the turnbuckle, dude, he ate that. I mean, I worry about Dolph because I'm worried about like how many bumps is too much. When's his bump card going to fill up? Because he takes Mr. Perfect bumps every single match. So, no, I'd say Matt made LA Knight look great, but Dolph could have got himself a job based on that match. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. The turnbuckle thing is what we were going to launch off into, the what went right / what went wrong, and then compare the turnbuckle bumps of him, Brett, Owen. I tried to find one with Dutch. I didn't have the time. That is going to be for a future episode, Take a Drink, so do stay tuned for that, because I'm excited for that segment. They both lost. Why bother? In a sense, do you know what I mean? It's like, is it an attitude check, basically? Or is it like, well, you're not signed, so you don't get a win? Tough.
That's a tough spot to be in. You're in a tournament at the face Cena, so what do you do? It doesn't look like a really, unless somebody gets injured and somebody comes in to replace him in the tournament, it looks pretty flat right now, especially if Cena, he said he's literally basically going to put people over on the way out. He hinted at that in the recent interview, that he's not going out on top. He's passing the torch to other younger talent. So I don't know who that would be if somebody inserts themselves, but that's where maybe it's old head thinking, as people say today. I'm looking at it like you both came one off, put these people over. What are promoters or people in other promotions going, what's the indies going to look like? TNA's working with WWE. Are they going to knock Nick down a peg or two based on doing a job on TV? Mm-hmm. That's the way it used to be. I don't know now. It could be nothing. Trust me, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to forget they even had the matches. You know?
There are a lot of matches. Hey, it's going back to 3 hours on SmackDown as well, so there's another hour for you to enjoy on a Friday night.
Enjoy the show. They like that in the They Live opening. Enjoy the show.
Yeah, Turkey likes that.
They want that to be revolving with Tony Gurria. What are you, a smartass? And I'll give Patreon alternate versions. Trust me.
You need to do Hell Comes to Frogtown next. I don't even know what scene it'd be.
You know who I've been in communication with? Maven, about recreating the fight scene in the alley.
Dude. That's good, because 100%. I think a couple of people said that I should have been Keith. He's not Keith Allen.
Keith David.
I was like, man, me and him, we don't have much in common.
Here's the funny part. Maven was texting me as I was texting him saying, dude, do you want to do the fight scene? So if we get together early next year, we will try to recreate the fight scene.
You know what we should do? Is recreate the fight scene, but as Timmy and Jimmy in South Park, which recreated that fight scene.
I know. That was few Patreon comments. I actually brought that up. You know me though, my insanity, I'm like, okay, well, let's rent a car and break the window. They don't even do that in the TKO days right now, but we're going to break a window.
Okay, so there's one more bit of news that we're going to discuss, and then we're going to shut down the show, which is ending up being like a record-breaking almost length at this point. And we scrubbed like 4 segments out of this because I can't stop writing these damn formats. Anyway, Chris Jericho.
Hey, if you want us to do a daily show, let us know. We discussed it. James has plenty of free time.
God. Hey. Hey, it was part of the plan at one point. Chris Jericho has basically been in AEW for too long, I think. I mean, he was getting the Cody Rhodes treatment the last couple of years. People didn't want to see him there anymore. And let's be absolutely brutally frank with it. He was putting on weight. He was getting old. The wrestling wasn't where it should have been compared to, when he first got in there. Many groups that he had of varying... People would argue that nobody ever got over with it working with him, apart from maybe Sammy Guevara. That is the knock against Chris Jericho in AEW, at least the last few years. AEW fans booed him more than pretty much anybody else. And all those things together has basically built up AEW fan apathy. Not been seen since April, I believe, of this year. He went on a Fozzy tour, disappeared from television from that. The Learning Tree, which kind of reversed the tide for Jericho for a little bit, and then people got sick of that, and then anyway disappeared. Got back off the Fozzy tour. He's been available for months to go back to AEW television. He's not been called back up. All we know at this point is that his birthday was last week, I think. He took a gym selfie at the age of 55. Really good shape. He's lost a huge amount of weight. He's finally got abs back that he's not seen in quite a while. And I think a lot of people thought, well, this is his way of telling prospective wrestling promoters out there, hey, I'm in shape. I'm still a big name out there. Let's talk. Now, he then went on his podcast, Talk is Jericho, and he had the Dudley Boys on with him. And he was talking about TNA Bound for Glory, which was the Dudley Boys' last ever match against the Hardy Boys in a tables match. Anyway, this is what he said. That crowd looked huge. It looked huge. This is Bound for Glory. They announced nearly 8,000. It was more like under 6,000 paid, I think, but there was over 6,000 in the building. It was like a WWE level crowd. The place was packed. Now, Jericho then compared Bound for Glory to AEW. I was watching this and not saying anything out of school here, but comparing Bound for Glory to watching AEW Dynamite when they were at the ECW Arena, which looked like a Tony Condello taping. I'm sorry, it did. TNA looked like the second biggest company in the world, and that was amazing. And the presentation was amazing. Now, for people who don't know, Tony Condello shows they were the death tours in Canada in the middle of absolutely nowhere with like 50 people in a community rec centre. Okay, is he saying this purely to get on WWE's good side? Is he playing chess here and trying to get a better price with Tony Khan? Has this all been worked out in advance? Or is he just sucking up to the Dudley Boys because they were there?
No, I think, Eric Bischoff's quote says it right there. He is playing chess. He is letting WWE or anybody else know, including AEW, I'm in shape. So whether the interpretation of that gym selfie, I need to get in better shape, by the way, I need to get my abs back. He's saying to Tony Khan in a way, you can interpret it. It's like a painting. You're looking at it going, I'm in shape, Tony. Bring me back and pay me more. I'm in shape, Triple H. Bring me in and pay me a lot of money. The Dudleys do deserve to be honored, though, for the last match against the Hardys. So he was paying homage to that. He was putting over the crowd at TNA. Of course, the AEW thing in the ECW arena, the arena only holds maybe less. When you had talked, they'd said 1,000 to 1,100 when, and sometimes stuffed a little bit more in there back in the early days. Now they have it like a true kind of arena with the box truss, with the Titantrons. So maybe a little bit less than that. If they had higher bleachers, it would look a little bit more full. Obviously, I think it was
like 900
people.
Yeah, about that.
So where they had TNA Bound for Glory was, I believe, Lowell, Massachusetts, in one of the auditoriums or arenas there, hold around 7,000 to 8,000 people. But the big Titantron and all that stuff eat up that whole area behind it for the most part. It could be all true, but make no mistake about it, Chris Jericho is an intelligent, smart, calculating politicker. And you need to be one to be 55 years old, still commanding 7 figures a year. Am I off base with that salary?
Absolutely not.
Who's to argue with him? By the way, we talked about Eddie earlier in this full episode. Eddie, Chris Jericho, and other people in the Cruiserweight division were victims of politicking. Jericho now is using the politicking to his advantage. Is he harming anybody? Now, people could say with all the groups and everything, but I believe Chris got into those groups or made those groups with getting himself over, but also trying to get the group over. Everybody in there. That's almost an impossibility, by the way. If you have 5, 6 people in a group, to get everybody equally as over. Sure. We're looking at, and guess what we're doing, and everybody's doing about Chris Jericho right now, as, like I just said earlier about Matt Cardona and Dolph Ziggler. Unless somebody inserts themselves into the tournament, maybe Chris Jericho, it's kind of a flat tournament, isn't it? But Chris's contract kind of, it conflicts with that last match in Washington, correct?
We don't know. It ends at the end of this year.
That's even more beautiful because guess what people are going to continue to do? Mm-hmm. What we're doing right now. And guess who's going to pay attention? Maybe not to us, but everybody else talking about it. WWE and especially Tony Khan and AEW. Now, I think this is an important contract for Chris because this will probably be the last wrestling contract that Chris Jericho has if he wants to walk away healthy. And it's I know he's had his issues and the weight gain and also probably injuries and other stuff. And he's 55. Your adrenals, traveling, doing the concert and the wrestling thing at the same time, splitting focus, all these different things, it's wear and tear on your body. So my guess, and hopefully I'm wrong, this would probably be the last physical wrestling contract that Chris would sign. So maximize it. Hey, try to get an 8-figure contract. Smartass.
I've got a theory.
I'm not calling you a smartass, Chris, by the way. With love.
You tell me if you think I'm wrong here. So people have been saying, oh, he could come back at the Rumble. And I said, of course he's going to come back at the Rumble, because where's the Rumble?
Toronto?
Saudi Arabia.
Oh, Saudi Arabia. I forgot.
And guess what Turkey likes? He likes Attitude Era stars, and he's willing to overpay to get them. Chris Jericho is still one of the biggest Attitude Era stars. He can still go to a point, and he could still probably go better now because he's lost a load of weight.
Oh, better than that tag match in Saudi Arabia with Hunter, Shawn, Taker, and Kane.
Can we never review that? Can we never review that?
Oh, I thought you said, can we review that?
Oh, Lord, no.
To say absolutely not.
No, Lord, no. Isn't it embarrassing that Shawn Michaels was the best of the four, and he'd been retired 8 years?
He'd been rested. He rested for 8 years. Now, let's get back to Chris. You are absolutely right. I will stand by that, because you know what? Chris can make in one night at the Royal Rumble what he made or more from AEW in a year.
And they will. Like, some payoffs I've heard are as crazy as like $2 million for a match. You know, that's probably what Shawn got paid to do that. It's ridiculous.
I heard Shawn and Hunter. I heard Shawn got $2 million. I've heard people have gotten more than $2 million for a match.
Yeah, could be Goldberg, could be Brock Lesnar, could be probably not Cain Velasquez, but yeah, Roman Reigns. I don't know if he got paid any more than. I doubt. Well, I don't doubt anything, but Roman Reigns already makes 12 to 15 million a year. Would they pay him any more, or is it just part of his contract now?
Well, I mean, he could have negotiated a separate bonus payoff for Saudi Arabia. I don't know. The whole thing with Chris is, here's a third or a second theory, because you gave the best theory of all, combining everything. He goes, his contract runs out, he does the Rumble as a surprise return. Then he goes back to AEW for even more money. He double dipped. You got to give him credit, man. It's business. It's not show friends. It's not, it's show business. And Chris understands that. And he is definitely, for somebody that kind of gets overlooked at one of the greatest, I mean, in-ring, promo, character, but also business-wise, severely underrated. And he probably uses all that to his advantage.
To end this segment, I guess I'll do the Eric Bischoff quote. Here's the fun thing about Chris. I've been watching the prequel to all this for about a year and a half. I've seen this train coming. Chris is constantly playing chess, and in my opinion, I kind of think I see what he's doing, and I think he's brilliant. He's raising his stock value, and guess what? If he stays with AEW, he's more valuable than he was 6 months ago. And if he's not to stay with AEW, he has value that he didn't have 6 months ago. With WWE, I presume he means. But Chris is smart enough to see that. If you had seen him a year ago, I did, and I went, whoa, Chris, have you seen a mirror lately? You know, not to be cruel, he basically calls him fat. But then, once again with the selfie, it's all calculated, I think. Do you remember years ago, and I keep using this example, like 2007, he just started plastering TNA logos on his website.
Yeah, with his back to the thing, right?
And he was never going.
You know what's funny is, I'm going to just go back on one of our YouTube community posts. I was pretty proud that I was trying to get back into shape. My back seemingly was getting a little bit better. And I posed, it was actually a picture that I posted on my fitness channel. It was by my resistance band all-in-one trainer. And almost every comment was, you're coming back. You're getting back in the ring, blah, blah, blah. And that was, seriously, I swear to God, that was the furthest thing from my mind. But it works. I didn't even mean to do it, but with Chris doing that, it was a much bigger name than me, way bigger than I could ever hope to be. He's going to put it out there. And the promoters are going to bite on it more than any fan will, which is exactly chef's kiss right there.
So hopefully this show was a chef's kiss for you as well. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. This was a very long episode. Goodness me. Man, like over an hour longer than we normally go. Time-wise, anyway. That's all that green screen stuff for you, I'll tell you. Anyway, I won't let Stevie forget that for a long, long time. He needs to... He couldn't hear me.
How many F-bombs did I drop off camera?
He could not hear me for 10 minutes, and he had like these ear things in as well, you know, the loop. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again every single Friday. We're not going anywhere, damn it. Turkey likes it that way, let me tell you. We're out with a new episode every single Friday. In a few weeks' time, the schedule will change slightly. We'll apprise you of what's going on sort of over Christmas time, but, you know, you won't be lacking for Stevie Richards show content, I assure you of that. So once again, every show is out on Friday, fresh clips on social media as well as YouTube every single day. And with that, over to Stevie to thank the Patreon fans and everybody else for your support.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you to everybody here on YouTube. Please subscribe, click the bell to get notified, and, of course, comment below. If you comment, Turkey likes that. The They Live thing, they wanted Turkey likes that in the on one of the billboards. I will give you a story of how insane wrestlers are and how we, quote, pop ourselves or make ourselves laugh. I was making a sandwich the other day that consisted of a certain lunch meat. I went to eat it, and before I ate it, I looked at it and said, Turkey doesn't like that, because it was a turkey sandwich. And I made myself laugh out loud for like 3 minutes. So yeah, I'm losing my mind. Thank you very much, everybody.
Turkey likes that.
Yeah, Turkey likes that. Remember, patreon.com/Stevie Richards. Like James has said before, growing strength to strength, as he would put it. I think we have over 1,300 members now. Thank you so much for that. You're getting a ton of behind-the-scenes footage. I did the behind-the-scenes of the They Live opening. Thank you very much for watching that. I was very motivated and satisfied with that. Also, watch-alongs every Monday. WrestleMania 1 last week. This week, Eddie versus Ray, Halloween Havoc, great cruiserweight match, and future watch-alongs. We have tons and tons of topics and watch-alongs. Pre-show, show before the show, and show modes. And of course, as I said in the beginning, behind the scenes of the production of Stevie Richards Show. Thank you so much for watching episode 72. Catch us next week, episode 73. What's it going to be about? Who knows? Turkey likes to be surprised. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week for episode 73 of the Stevie Richards Show. Aha, aha, and what are you, smartass? Aha.